Late Night Louie coming at you. LouieTeeNetwork podcast, episode 262. This should be a fun one. NFC draft rankings tonight. We've done the AFC already. We'll go through the entire conference and talk about what I thought of all of the 16 teams in the NFC draft. 3 and out. Different ending to the show tonight. No garbage time. I haven't done 3 and out in a very long time. So that should be interesting. Some topics that I felt like needed to be talked about. And of course, we're going to turn the show over to you guys. Social media maneuvers. And I want to start that part off with a little bit of Daniel Snyder talk. I don't want to talk much about it because you guys know how I feel about this, but it does bear mentioning. So a little bit of some of everything on this show tonight. Saddle up. It's going to be a fun show. Looking forward to it. The Louie T Network podcast starts now. Who else could it be but me, your man, Louie T? Welcome to the 262nd installment of the Louie T Network podcast. And speaking of which, it would be nice if I actually changed the date on the podcast. I was running. I'm gonna tell y'all a quick story. So all of this will make sense to you. So I was sitting down to get ready to do the podcast, right? And so we are now squared away on the date and the episode. And I was sitting down to do the podcast. And I was going to be on time. I sat down. It was 10:03. And I was feeling good. I was like, okay, making progress. And I turn the camera on. I adjust the mic. I do everything I need to do. And I do that last second check to make sure I don't have anything in my teeth. I look presentable, this, that, and the third. And I look down and I see that I've got drool all over my jacket. And it was one of the jackets that I wore while I was watching the kids last week. And it's just one of those reminders you get when you're a dad that, hey, nothing's safe, okay? And I purposefully put that jacket on because it's a jacket I don't care about. But I thought to myself, well, why not throw this jacket on tonight? It'll look pretty, it'll look dope tonight. I haven't worn this on air in a while. So I throw it on, I button it up. I'm thinking I'm clean. I get into the camera and I look and I got white stuff all over both shoulders. And I'm like, okay, can't do that. So that's part of the reason why your man Louie T was running a little tardy tonight. No excuses. I like to be fashionably late anyway. But that's the reason I was late tonight. Anyway, I digress. Looking forward to chopping it up with you guys tonight. I like these late night podcasts. I don't like to make it a regular thing, however, because there are other things you would rather be doing than kicking it with your man Louie T. There's NHL hockey, there's NBA playoffs, NHL playoffs, there's Major League Baseball. There's so many different things you could be doing. So I don't like to take away from your time to do those things. However, when it's convenient, I have to, make the podcast work. Couldn't get it in earlier today. So I thought later on tonight would be the best time to get it done. So here we are. That said, I told you guys that we were going to get into these conferences in terms of the draft. We've already knocked down the AFC, saving the best for last. That's actually a lie. I feel like the AFC had a stronger crop of drafts than the NFC did. That said, the NFC did hoist the Lombardi, so I saved them for last this time around. Normally, to the victors go the spoils. Normally, I would have done the NFC first, but decided to do it in the opposite direction. And my findings were that the AFC draft, they had the first and second best drafts, according to me. Again, everyone has a different perspective on how these drafts turned out and what was the best and worst, this, that, and the third, and all the other drafts in between look like. For me, the Jets had the best draft, and then the Ravens had the second best draft. So if you're asking me, those two drafts dwarf any draft that was had in the NFC. period. But that said, that doesn't mean that there weren't some good drafts to be had in the conference. And so that's where we're going to start the show tonight with the gem dropping session. Let me drop this gem on your melon. Open your mind, let your conscience be free. You're now rolling with your man, LouieTeeNetwork. Let me open you up. Get you thinking a little bit. So, NFC draft rankings. We will start with the division that housed the eventual Super Bowl champions in the Los Angeles Rams. This particular division actually had the two teams that represented the NFC in the championship game. So we will start with what we perceive to be one of the toughest divisions in the NFC as a whole, in the NFC West. The number 4 team in that division, and they're usually last in the division draft-wise, is the Los Angeles Rams, because they don't give a shit about the draft, to be honest with you. Not from a first and second round perspective. They usually don't draft until the 3rd round, and they're very comfortable in their skin doing it that way. I wouldn't advise any other team in the league to do what the Rams do routinely with the draft, which is ignore the first day of the draft, never having a first round pick. They don't have a first round pick, I think, until like 2020, maybe 6 is the earliest that they may have a first round pick. So I wouldn't advise teams out there to follow the Los Angeles Rams model of drafting. However, it works for them. So they didn't have a first round pick. They didn't have a second round pick. They never have a first round pick. They usually don't have a second round pick. They had one a couple of years ago when they took Cam Akers, but generally speaking, they usually don't have a second round pick, and they usually don't begin their draft until the 3rd round. That was the case this year. So I don't love their draft. I never loved their draft, but they always do a really good job of finding mid to late round gems, and that's why they're able to supplement their roster the way that they do. Top heavy with the stars. They loaded up with guys that are big time names, that are veteran players that can help them win now, but just enough damage in the draft with mid to late round players, and even some undrafted or cast off players from elsewhere that come in and fill in the gaps well enough to where they can get away with having a top heavy roster. I like Jacoby Durant, the South Carolina State corner, in the 4th round. He's a slot guy that I think will project well to the NFL. You know how I feel about Kyron Williams, the Notre Dame running back. I think he's going to be a perfect fit for that ZBS that they have in Los Angeles, and he'll be a great addition to that offense. I think Terion Kendrick could be the steal of their draft. However, that's the 6th round corner out of Georgia. Super talented kid, was at Clemson, ran into some issues off the field, ended up having to transfer to Georgia. And I think a lot of teams were turned off by some of the off the field issues. He's not the most elite athlete, but he's a really feisty corner with some length and size. And so I'd be interested to see what they get out of him, because I think he has the ability to potentially be a really solid NFL corner. So all in all, it's a draft that, doesn't wow you. There's no needle movers here, but just solid guys. And that's what the Rams do. They beat you up with day 3 solid acquisitions. And that's what they're probably going to ultimately do again here. But I don't love their draft, and I never, ever do. So they come in at number 4 in their division, 14th overall in the conference. Coming in at number 3 in that division is the Arizona Cardinals. I thought that this was just a very disjointed draft. It seemed like they were kind of all over the place. To me, I thought a little confused after making the trade for Hollywood Brown and moving out of the 1st round altogether. Clearly, wide receiver was one of the needs that they had coming into the draft, and getting Hollywood Brown addressed that need for them. So they didn't feel the need to double back and get another receiver. I tend to disagree. You traded for a veteran that's coming up on the end of his rookie deal. I think he's got 2 years left, if I'm not mistaken. Does Hollywood Brown this year and then next. And maybe you don't have to draft a receiver right now. It's not of maximum importance because you still got him under contract for 2 more years. But I thought you could have taken care of wide receivers, a deep wide receiver draft class. You re-signed the tight end Zach Ertz. So I didn't necessarily feel like, attacking tight end in the second round was a necessity, but you took Trey McBride. I got no problems with that. Like the pick. You really needed to fix up the edge rushing position. You don't really have anything out there after Chandler Jones departed. So that was a big need, and you doubled down on that. Cameron Thomas in the third. Same with Jay Sanders. So, again, I don't have a problem with that. Then you don't have a pick all the way until the 6th round. And that's when, for me, things start to go off the rails. When you don't have a 4th or a 5th round pick in a draft this deep, that's problematic. So they should have tried their hardest to package up some of these picks to get somebody that would have been of more impact to me. They went with the quantity over quality. That's never my thing. But, we'll see how these guys work out for them. Keontae Ingram, running back from USC, Lectus Smith, guard out of Virginia Tech. Again, none of these guys move the needle for me whatsoever. So I just thought it was a disjointed draft. I thought they needed to address corner, right? I still don't love what they have at the cornerback position. And I thought that was something that they needed to do a lot sooner. Defensive tackle was another position that I looked at and said I could see them maybe upgrading that position. And neither one of those positions were touched until late in the draft. They didn't even get a defensive tackle. And they got a cornerback in the 7th round. They didn't touch that until the 7th round. That was problematic for me. I didn't love this draft. It was 3rd overall in the division, 13th overall in the conference for the Arizona Cardinals. I mean, to me, they're more of a veteran team that wants to win now, but they're still relatively young. You know what I'm saying? So I thought they should have done a better job of adding, some more players at various positions. I thought they went heavy on edge rusher, which I'm not blaming them for doing that. You lose, a running back, so you feel like you need to replace one. You lost Chase Edmonds, so maybe Keontae Ingram forced, was something that you felt like you needed to do. Just not having a pick in the 4th and 5th round in the draft where the best value was rounds 2 through 5, to only have 3 picks total in those, 4 rounds, that's not good enough. In a draft where you ended up with 5, 7, 8 picks, only 3 of them come in rounds 2 through 5. I can't love that. I don't love it. And hence, the Arizona Cardinals came in at number 3 in their draft, in their division, rather, 13th overall in the conference. So number 2 in this division is the San Francisco 49ers. They did not have a 1st round pick. Remember last year they traded up to get their hands on quarterback Trey Lance, and thus they did not own a 1st round pick in the 2022 NFL draft. But without that 1st round pick, they still were able to put together a decent draft. It's not a, world-beating draft by any stretch of the imagination. And if they were in any division not named the NFC West, this is probably good enough for either last place or 3rd at best in any other division. But because this division didn't really do a great job of drafting in my estimation, they ended up in the 2nd spot here with this draft. And it's not a bad draft. It's just not a great draft. So Drake Jackson, edge rusher out of USC. There's some upside there. And he reminds me a lot of the edge rushers that you generally get from USC. Another one of those, what's the guy that was drafted out of SC that went to the Chargers? He's now in Seattle. I don't know why I can't think of his name right now, but he kind of fits in that mold. Okay. Terion Davis-Price is a guy that I really like. I thought this was a little high for him in the 3rd round, but anytime the Shanahans draft a back, no matter where they draft him, I trust them. So I think he's got a really great skill set that translates well to the NFL. Doesn't have a lot of tread off the tires. He can run. has some size on him. There's a lot to like about Terion Davis-Price. It's just thought it was a little early for him. But again, I'll never question the Shanahans when they decide to pull the trigger on a running back. Danny Gray is a guy that can absolutely fly. Receiver that they're going to add to the mix. I just don't think they have enough juice at receiver. I would have been more inclined if I were San Francisco to spend that second round pick on a receiver. Don't know what was available. I can check right now. Maybe the value wasn't there at 61. Let's see. So I would have been more excited about them taking Jalen Tolbert in the second round. He was not there at pick 41. Dallas took him in the third round. 17 picks prior to the 49ers selecting. So he would have had to have been taken with that second round pick where they spent it on Drake Jackson. I would have much preferred them take a guy like Jalen Tolbert, even a Velus Jones. You know what? With the issues that you're having with Deebo Samuel, Velus Jones Jr. would have been the perfect replacement for him. Like identical carbon copy of Deebo Samuel. You would have been better off taking him. And then if Deebo had issues and you couldn't work it out, you would at least have a guy that could do the things that Deebo Samuel has provided for you. And maybe they view Danny Gray in that light. I don't see him as that same type of player, but boy, can he run. And they like guys that can run. Remember, they had the run with Marquise Goodwin. That's part of the reason why they drafted Brandon Ayuk. They want guys that can run. And Danny Gray can run, but didn't necessarily love the selection there. I would have preferred them take a higher wide receiver, but that's fine. They took Danny Gray. Spencer Buford, guard from UTSA. No problems with that guard tackle combo there. But again, there's not a lot to love and chew on. I really like Kalia Davis, defensive tackle out of Central Florida in the 6th round, a guy coming off of a knee injury, but has the potential to be very disruptive on the inside. I really like those UCF defensive tackles. They're usually athletic, one gap penetrators that play on the opposite side of the line of scrimmage. If you can get the most out of one of those guys, tremendous upside for a lot of those UCF defensive tackles is just getting it out of them. All right, getting that upside and turning it into actual, instead of it being potential, turning it into production. You know, that's the thing with Kalia Davis. If you can turn his potential into production, you've got something there in the 6th round. Tariq Castro Fields is another interesting pick, corner out of Penn State. So, and then they take a quarterback, and this is, you know, Kyle Shanahan's MO, Brock Purdy in the 7th round. This is what he does. You know, he took what's the name of the quarterback? Shucks. CJ Beathard in the later rounds a few years ago. This is what they do. Take one of these guys that, you know, isn't a starting quarterback in the league, but is a competent backup, smart guy, can, you know, process the offense, and in a pinch come in and give you some quality snaps. That's what Brock Purdy will be. He'll be the new CJ Beathard in San Francisco. So again, I don't love this draft, but you're choosing a lesser of the evils here. 49ers come in 2nd in their division, and overall in the NFC, they're 13th, or excuse me, 9th are the San Francisco 49ers. And number 1, and it's almost awkward for me to say this because usually year in and year out, I hate their drafts. I always talk about the Seahawks being the smartest team in the room, and, you know, them bumbling all over themselves in the 1st and 2nd round, overdrafting players because they're the smartest team in the room, or trading back 15 times out of the 1st round altogether, just so that they can take more guys that are less talented instead of taking, you know, concentrated, talented players in the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd round. They much rather have, you know, 4 5th round, 6th round picks and 3 7th round picks. And you're like, why? I mean, why? So they didn't do that this year. I thought they did a really good job of allowing the draft to come to them and really taking advantage of talented football players where they sat. This was a really good draft, and I'm not used to saying that about Seattle, but it's a different time, and maybe when you've got Russell Wilson and the window is always open, you feel a lot more compelled to go for it every year. So there's less, there's less incentive to be patient and to wait. I don't know, because even what they would do, their philosophy when Russell Wilson was there, trading back and picking up more picks, didn't strike me as a team that was looking to win now. But this is a quality, like these are the types of drafts they should have had when they had Russell Wilson. They would have been a lot more competitive these last 3-4 years. Charles Cross in the first round, the best pass blocking tackle in the draft, to me, goes to the Seattle Seahawks in the first round, 9th overall. Thought they were going to trade out of that pick. I was convinced that if they got the right deal, they were going to move out of that pick. I was shocked when they made a selection. Second round, they get Boye Mafe, edge rusher out of Minnesota. I love this pick. Remember, edge rusher was one of the biggest needs that Seattle had coming into the offseason. They get the edge rusher from the Chargers. They add Boye Mafe. I told you I like what the young fella Darrell Taylor was doing last year. So now you've got a nice little rotation going in Seattle with the edge rushers you've added this offseason. Then you get Kenneth Walker, the third, the very next pick. I thought this was a beautiful pick by the Seattle Seahawks because you've got a plethora of running backs, but every year it seems like 2 or 3 of those running backs get injured and you end up having to start Travis Homer or someone like that, right? Or DJ Dallas has to start a game or 2 for you. Let's end all of that, okay? I love me some Chris Carson, but Chris Carson gets hurt every single year, all right? I thought that we knew you overdrafted the running back out of what is the name of that school? Why am I blanking? And I can see the dang on logo and the colors. Yikes. San Diego State. There we go. We knew you overdrafted him. Rashad Penny. Just a terrible pick. He third round running back you took in the first round. He hasn't been able to stay healthy either. And so every year you find yourself having to start a guy. At one point, I think it was last year, maybe even the year before, maybe a combination of the two. You had to go get the ex-Baltimore Raven running back, the one that took ballerina and does the what is it called? River dancing? I forgot what the hell that stuff's called. You had to go get him. And you struggled at running back. I said all that to say this. It's good to go get you a guy that's a dog, that's a horse. That's what Kenneth Walker III is. He played in inclement weather, so playing in Seattle isn't going to really be that big of a change and adjustment for him. I love this pick. I thought it was one of your better selections in the draft. Kobe Bryant, Abraham Lucas in the 3rd round, tackle out of Washington State. 4th round, Kobe Bryant. The other guy, I love the other guy corners, okay? The other guy, Kobe Bryant is one of those corners that suffers from the other guy syndrome, and I love it. I told you that already. In college football, when there's an alpha at corner, the other corner, okay, the other guy is going to be picked on. And it's up to you as the other guy, okay, the other corner, if you will. It's up to you to stand up and say, not on my block, okay, not on my side of the field. Try that shit somewhere else. Kobe Bryant did that, okay? He played opposite of Sauce Gardner. So a lot of teams went away from Gardner and came Kobe Bryant's way. And he had to constantly prove himself. And he did a hell of a job doing that. And I think that's a really good pick for Seattle. Tariq Woolen is a guy that is, to me, the quintessential Seattle Seahawks selection. Height, weight, speed specimen at the cornerback position. They love these types of players. They usually pan out well for Seattle. So I'm looking forward to seeing how that turns out. Tyreek Smith out of Ohio State as an edge rusher. Solid guy in the 5th round. And then Bo Melton is an interesting wide receiver out of Rutgers that they get in the 7th round. So I thought that they did a lot of good things, man. This Seattle Seahawks draft is one of the most impressive drafts I've seen them put together in quite some time. So much so that the Seattle Seahawks were the number one team in their division and the number one overall draft in the NFC overall. I thought this was a really tight draft. They kept it together from top to bottom. It was well orchestrated. It was decisive. And I thought that they hit on every single need outside of quarterback. And they just made a conscious decision to pass on quarterback. And I'm totally fine with that. I got no problems with them deciding to punt on the entire quarterback position this draft. If you're going to punt on quarterback in a draft, this is the one to do it. So I didn't have any problems with them making a concerted effort to avoid quarterback this year. And I thought they went in every single direction that they needed to go to address some glaring needs on their football team. Offensive line, edge rusher, cornerback, wide receiver. I thought, hell, even adding a running back that's going to bolster their football team and give them a fighting chance, no matter who's that quarterback. So I thought they did some really quality things throughout this draft for the Seattle Seahawks. So now we move on to the next team that lasted in the postseason. That's the Green Bay Packers and their division in the NFC North. And so we start with the team that had the worst draft in that division. And this was the worst draft in the NFC, period. And that's the Chicago Bears. It's a lot of players. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 guys, right? When you get a new GM, and they got a new GM in Ryan Poles, okay? When you clean house the way that they did and you start over, this is the kind of draft you expect. 11 players. He wants to put his stamp and imprint on this roster. You're going to see turnover, a lot of guys on the way out, new guys coming in. Most of these guys that they drafted, even these sixth and they got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 picks, 3 in the sixth, 3 in the seventh of their 11 draft picks. Even those guys are likely to make this football team. If they show any promise, they're going to make the football team because that's where the Bears are in their development as a football team with a brand new GM. That said, I like some of the early picks, but I don't love the lack of help that they've surrounded Kyler Murray, that they've surrounded Justin Fields with. I want you to take a listen to this list of wide receivers that they currently have on their roster, and you tell me if what they did in the draft was enough. All right, so this is the list of receivers that the Chicago Bears currently have on their roster that they're surrounding their young second-year quarterback, Justin Fields, with. Isaiah Coulter, okay? Chris Fink, Velus Jones Jr., they just drafted him this year, and I like the pick. Darnell Mooney, the only other guy that makes any sense in Chicago right now. David Moore, Daz Newsome, Dante Pettis, Byron Pringle, Kevin Shaw, Tajay Sharp, Equanimous St. Brown, and Simba Webster. This reads to me like a who's who list of failed receivers from elsewhere, okay? Equanimous St. Brown didn't cut it in Green Bay. Tajay Sharp didn't cut it in Atlanta nor in Tennessee. Byron Pringle isn't failed from Kansas City. Maybe a guy that is looking for a bigger role, and we'll see how he maybe responds to an expanded role, but he played well in Kansas City. I'm interested to see what he's able to do. Dante Pettis failed in San Francisco. Daz Newsome is a young second-year wide receiver, so the jury's still out on him. David Moore was in Seattle, had some good years with the Seahawks, but really didn't do much of anything with Denver or Green Bay last year. And Chris Fink and Isaiah Coulter are a couple of young guys that I wouldn't really hold my breath about. So Isaiah Coulter is interesting, Rhode Island prospect from a couple of drafts ago that was highly talented in that year's draft, but hasn't really done much. Chris Fink is a guy I know very well, went to Notre Dame. He's more of a slot receiver. But again, these guys don't move the needle. Outside of Darnell Mooney and their draft pick in the third round, Velus Jones Jr., I'm not excited about any of these guys. Daz Newsome and Brian Pringle, we'll see. But again, this is not what you do with the second year. What you do is what the Jets did. When you go out and you essentially say, all right, what do we need to do to make our guy comfortable? and you do whatever it takes. And if that means getting 3 tight ends, with which the Jets did, if that means going out and getting 2 or 3 receivers, which the Jets did, if that means drafting a running back in the second round, the best in the draft, that's what you do. That's not what the Bears did. They took a 3rd round wide receiver, and that was it. This is disgusting, is what it is. So just off the strength of that, I absolutely abhorred their draft because they didn't do nearly enough. Okay. I get that your secondary, you want to clean that up. And, maybe their new GM, Ryan Poles, one of his biggest sticklers is that we got to be strong in the back end. Maybe that's one of his things. Okay. But you know what? Your quarterback needs to be strong around him. And you had a chance with 2 picks within 9 selections of one another in the second round, 39 and 48 overall, to take a wide receiver. And you just decided, I'm going to take a corner and a safety. Your secondary was more important than giving your quarterback another target to throw the football to. You didn't address wide receiver until your 3rd pick. Now, Kyler Gordon out of Washington, I like him as a corner. Do I like him over the receivers that were available at this point of the draft? Absolutely not. Would I have rather them have taken the Georgia wide receiver at 39? Absolutely. Let's look at the receivers that were available. I know he was available. He didn't go to like 50 off the board until like 50 to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Let's see. George Pickens was available. John Mechie was available. Alec Pierce was available at the time of your selections. There were some guys that Sky Moore was available that I thought could have been needle movers that were better than Velus Jones. Now, that said, Velus Jones has a unique skill set, but you don't have a number 1 wide receiver. Like Darnell Mooney may be that. He's shown flashes like he could be a legitimate number 1, but the jury's still out on that. I think he is a top-notch 2. You don't have a number 1. You should have been hunting for one. Like George Pickens would have made the most sense. Again, he's a guy with an injury history. I get that. And if you're not comfortable with that, then you don't do that. John Mechie coming off of an ACL, I get that. Again, you're not comfortable with taking a guy that has an injury history. I get that. But to me, Velus Jones is like Deebo Samuel. But I think he is like Deebo Samuel light. He's not a great value version, more of a Dollar Tree version of him. So, again, going back to their draft, however, I like those first 3 picks. I'm not going to shit on Velus Jones. I like him. I like what he brings to the table, especially from a special team standpoint. Jaquan Brisker in the second round after the Kyler Gordon pick. Got no problems with that, okay? These are 3 strong selections. But then after that, again, it starts to go off the rails for me. It's just a who's list of guys that, may help, may not help, but I just don't love it. Not enough impact players at positions that needed to be addressed. I just thought there was so much more that needed to be done here. I don't have a problem with corner. I don't have a problem with safety. I don't have a problem with wide receiver. You definitely needed to upgrade the offensive line, and clearly you did that throughout this draft, taking 3 offensive linemen, but I'd be lying to 4 offensive linemen, excuse me. I'd be lying to you if I told you I love this draft. I don't. I thought it was the worst draft in the NFC, and it's really solely because you didn't take care of your prized possession. You didn't take care. You traded up, and again, this is a new regime. They may not love Justin Fields, but you took the job knowing Justin Fields was going into his second season. You have to do everything you can in your power to surround him with adequate weapons. You did not do that in your first year as GM. That should have been the first thing you should have wanted to do. That and upgrade the offensive line. Those are the 2 things that are going to make your young quarterback comfortable, being protected and having guys he can get the football to. I thought you failed because, again, if that was your number 1 goal, then you should have been attacking offensive line with one of these first 3 selections, not waiting until the 5th round and make it your first time drafting an offensive lineman and then going crazy in the final 3 rounds with offensive linemen. I don't love this draft. So much so, it's last in the NFC North, and it's dead last in the conference, 16th overall. The Minnesota Vikings check in at number 3 in this division. And I know I've talked to a lot of Vikings fans. And if I closed my eyes and I opened them and you told me that their GM was still Rick Spielman, I'd believe you looking at this draft. It looks like a Rick Spielman type draft. You end up with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 double digit, amount of players, which is a staple of a Rick Spielman draft. But, this is a new regime here. And they traded back in the first round with Detroit of all teams. Now, again, I've talked about the draft making bedfellows out of sworn enemies. That's not a surprise. We've seen, teams in the same division do business with one another because at the end of the day, you're just looking for something that's beneficial for your team. And if the trade it happens to be with the team in the division, so be it. But Louis seen at 32 overall when you had opportunities to take some talented football players at number 12. Interesting. Okay, I'm not going to knock the pick. I think he's a good football player, underrated in this draft. But you allowed the Lions to come up and get a guy that may be able to torment you for the next, 7, 8, 9, 10 years. We'll see. It could work out in your favor. He could turn out to be ass cheeks, and Louis Seen could turn out to be a fantastic safety for you. Andrew Booth is interesting, cornerback from Clemson that had, first round talent, but had some injury concerns and some things that, might have, turned teams away from him. You take him there. You traded back again in the second round and you got guard Ed Ingram. I just thought there was a little bit too many trade backs for a team that should be looking to acquire as much talent as they can, not quantity, but more quality, because you're in a weird space if you're the Minnesota Vikings. You got a new head coach, you got a new GM, but you have a veteran football team that you're still infusing with young talent. So Kirk Cousins and Adam Thielen and some of your defenders, a lot of your defenders on, the defensive side of the football, whether it's Harrison Smith or it's Eric Kendricks or it's his best bud from UCLA. I don't know why his name is escaping me right now. And all of those guys on that defense, Patrick Peterson, these are veteran players that want to win now. Justin Jefferson going into year 3 is ready to win now. Like, these are good football players that are veterans that aren't thinking about next year, the year after. They want to win now. So, the whole quantity over quality thing, isn't to me the best mode of operating if you're the Minnesota Vikings, when you're a team that if the offense continues to play at the level that we know they're capable of and the defense can finally get their act together because they've been terrible the last 3 years defensively, they can get back to some semblance of quality defense. This is a team that could win, and in a conference that isn't all that tough and isn't top heavy with quarterbacks, you could easily find yourself winning 10, 11 games if you can turn this thing around defensively. I didn't love, the quantity over quality method that they went with. You draft Louis Seen, but you could have had a safety in Notre Dame product. Shucks. My brain is just not working tonight. Kyle Hamilton. You could have had Kyle Hamilton at 12, and you decided that Louis Seen was better. A better option for you with more value because of the capital that you would pick up. Again, I'm not mad at you for that. I'm just saying, we'll see how it turns out. We'll see what Kyle Hamilton turns out to be in the league. We'll see what Louis Seen turns out to be for them. Andrew Booth is interesting. I like him. If he can stay healthy, he'll be a good football player for you. Brian Asamoah is interesting, athletic linebacker, a guy that can rush the quarterback a little bit. But again, I don't love this draft. I do like Nick Muse, your final pick in the 7th round. I think he'll actually be a quality replacement for the tight end that left in free agency and went to the Jets. I think he'll be a quality replacement for him. But I'd be lying to you if I said I love this draft, but uh, it's third overall, 12th in the conference as a whole for the Minnesota Vikings. We'll see how this draft ends up turning out for them. Coming in second in the NFC North is the Detroit Lions. And I just thought they had a fantastic draft. I really did love what they were able to assemble here. Aiden Hutchinson, Jameson Williams trading up, being aggressive. That's what the Vikings should have been doing. And they didn't have to do that. They sat at 12. But they let the Lions, who a lot of people think should have been going with the quantity over quality. They need everything, right? Well, they said, no, we don't need everything. We want good football. We want elite football players. To hell with the money ball approach where we get 17 dudes. I'd much rather concentrate it into 8. I don't need 10, 11, 12 picks. I'll give you 2 or 3 picks just to come up and get Jameson Williams. I'm not looking to have 4 or 5 different dudes. Let me get the elite guy, the guy that we think has a chance to be special. I love it. All right. So you get Aiden Hutchinson, you get Jameson Williams, Josh Pascal, edge rusher out of Kentucky, Kirby Joseph, a safety that I like out of Illinois. James Mitchell is a guy in the 5th round out of Virginia Tech at the tight end position that not a lot of people were talking about because he sustained an injury very early in the college football season, but he's a quality tight end. If he's healthy when he comes back, that's a steal potentially for them in the 5th round. I just thought this was a really quality draft for the Detroit Lions, man. I really like what they are putting together. And I thought that they really went after it, going after Jameson Williams and getting that guy, because I've said this so many times. If you don't have a true number 1 wide receiver, all of your receivers are misplaced because your number 2 is posing as a 1, your 3 is posing as a 2, your 4 is posing as a 3, so forth and so forth. Everyone's out of position when you don't have a true number 1. By getting Jameson Williams, Amon-Ra St. Brown, who was their de facto number 1, now gets to be what he was made to be, which is a number 2 option. And really, if DJ Chark comes in, I love that acquisition as well in free agency on the 1-year deal. If he comes in and plays the kind of football we know he's capable of, now Amon-Ra St. Brown is your number 3, and he'd be one of the best 3s in football. So there's a lot to like about this move, going to get Jameson Williams. Even if Chark is only there on a 1-year rental and he's gone and Amon-Ra has to step into the second role, I think those two could play really well with one another. So there's a lot to like here with what the Lions did. Aiden Hutchinson, not only is he going to come on the field and help, he's also going to help change the culture of that locker room. So you're getting some guys here that I think are going to move the needle for the Detroit Lions. I thought this was a fantastic draft. And so they were 2nd overall in this division, 3rd overall in the conference were the Detroit Lions. And so that leads us to our number 1 team in the division, the Green Bay Packers. And I was very hypercritical of the Packers' lack of a 1st-round pick spent on a receiver. I'm still critical of that. I thought it was bullshit, to be honest with you. However, you can't quibble at the amount of value they got out of those 2 selections, taking a couple of Georgia defenders and Quay Walker and Devontae Wyatt. I mean, you can't be upset at the players that they took. But and in their eyes, the value wasn't there at receiver. And then that's why they traded back up to 34 to snag Christian Watson. And all was right with the world once they did that, because to me, I said, he's got Green Bay Packer written all over him, because my comp for him was Valdez-Scantling. So, MVS is now in Kansas City. You needed a replacement, a deep threat, a guy that could take the top off the defense. Christian Watson can do that. And I said during the draft process, Christian Watson belongs in an offense where they run it and then they go heavy play action and look to take a shot. Minnesota, Green Bay, Cleveland, Tennessee. These were among the best destinations for him. Rams. These were the teams that have that hard run game, that stretch run game, that outside zone, that zone run blocking scheme, and then that hard play action fake. And then you get that one-on-one with that deep post over the middle of the football field, and this is the guy that can go get it in Christian Watson. So I love this pick. He had Green Bay Packer written all over him. He smelled like a Packer from a mile away. So this kind of made them not taking a receiver in the first round all better. It didn't take away some of the sting. They still are keeping alive this whole narrative. We don't draft first round wide receivers. That's bullshit. But Christian Watson's a good football player. He's going to fit on that Packers roster. And I think he's going to have an immediate impact on that offense. Sean Ryan, offensive lineman out of UCLA, solid pick there. Good value in the third round. Romeo Doubs, another wide receiver that they ended up taking out of Nevada. He was the go-to guy for Carson Strong at Nevada. So that's a solid pick there. And then another pick that I really liked here in the fifth round was Kingsley Enagbare, the linebacker / edge rusher out of South Carolina. So you move on from the Zadarius Smith. You add in Kingsley Enagbare, and he's going to come in and hopefully fill that void as a pass rusher for you. May not do it in year one, right away, but this is a guy you're going to continue to work with, develop, and hope that you get something from him a year or two down the road. So I really like the fifth round selection of Kingsley Enagbare. So all in all, I thought this was a strong draft by the Green Bay Packers, despite not being a little bit more aggressive at receiver in the first round. Again, you can't knock the hustle of what they ended up with, the two Georgia defenders, and then doubling back and getting Christian Watson, which was probably the best value, was getting him at 34 instead of reaching for him in the first round. You settled and waited, and he fell right into your lap. You were able to trade up and get him at 34. So I got no problems with how Green Bay attacked the early portion of this draft, added another receiver in Romeo Doubs in the fourth round, and then got him an edge rusher in the fifth round in Kingsley Enagbare. So all in all, I thought this was a quality draft by the Green Bay Packers. I thought it was the best one that was put forth in the NFC North, not by much, okay, which is evident by the Lions being third overall in the conference and the Packers being number 2 overall in the NFC. So solid draft by the Green Bay Packers. So now we move to the NFC South, where the Buccaneers were the next team to be around in the postseason. And so we start with the number 4 team in that division, and it's the New Orleans Saints. So really, it's not because I don't like this draft. It's just an incomplete draft. You have to have at least 6 players for me to give you a draftable grade, okay? Or at least a ranking, and they only had 5 selections. This is not uncommon for the Saints. This is something that they routinely do because it's a veteran team that's always in win now mode. They don't have a ton of roster spots available. I actually don't have a problem with this method right here, okay? I don't have a problem with a team essentially admitting I don't have a ton of space on my roster for 11 draft picks. I don't need to go out here and draft 9 players when I only have 5 roster spots at the back end of my roster available. But I just go get 5 dudes, okay? And if I only got 4 roster spots and all 5 make an impression, then somebody else will get cut and I'll make space for all 5 of my draft picks. If only 4 of them are ready, then all 4 of them will make the team and 1 guy will be on the practice squad. I had no problems with that, right? But I do have a problem with not coming away with at least 6 new players. So 5 is right under that threshold, but I can tell you this, the players that they did take, really good value. So Olave in the first round, love him. Perfect compliment. And then knowing now what we know, we did not know this at the time, but they ultimately ended up adding Jarvis Landry. So now you've got Jarvis Landry, Chris Olave, and you got Michael Thomas coming back. All of a sudden now, that Saints offense doesn't look all that bad. And let me make sure I'm not forgetting anyone. I feel like I'm forgetting someone, but let me make sure I'm not forgetting that they added someone else in free agency. I don't think that's the case, but let's just make sure that they didn't add another wide receiver. I feel like they added another one, but even if they didn't, I feel good about what they have now. Yeah, no, they didn't add another receiver, but I told you the emergence of Marquez Callaway last year in the absence of Michael Thomas, coupled with Jarvis Landry signing and Chris Olave's drafting to go along with Traquan Smith and Michael Thomas, all of a sudden, and Deontay Harris, you've got a good, formidable group of 6 players at the receiver position that you feel confident in, that, you know, you can get the football to. And even if Michael Thomas doesn't play, you don't fall off of the face of the NFL landscape because you don't have a true threat at receiver now. So Trevor Penning, again, had to have this one at 19. You lose your tackle in free agency to the Miami. Where did he go? Miami or Jacksonville? I think he went to Miami Dolphins. And what is the name of your damn left tackle? Damn, I can see his face. I can't think of his damn name, but he's now in Miami. So Teron Armstead. So you move on from Teron Armstead, and you had to replace him. That wasn't optional. The offensive line is pretty much set. You just need to replace the left tackle. You do that here with Trevor Penning. Problem solved. All right. Receiver and tackle were the 2 things you needed to get in the first round, and you got both. I love it. Alontae Taylor at cornerback in the 2nd round. I love it. Got to go opposite size, length, some speed, opposite of Marshawn Lattimore. I love it. Bring it on. So DeMarco Jackson, even in the 5th round, linebacker out of App State. Love it. I mean, again, your guy, Demario Davis isn't going to be able to do it forever, right? At some point, he's going to need to be replaced. Maybe DeMarco Jackson is the guy you groom, and maybe 2 years from now, he's ready to take over that mantle. Who knows? But I like the pick. I like DeMarco Jackson as a football player. So, 5 selections overall for the Saints. They just didn't meet my criteria of the bare minimum is you got to have at least 6 dudes. They didn't make it. So that's why if they had a 6th player, they'd probably be either number 1 or number 2 in this division. This was a strong draft. Again, bread, egg, cheese, and milk, but still not enough ingredients to make anything with bread, eggs, cheese, and milk. You still need a couple more ingredients. They were 1 ingredient short at the grocery store from making this a 1 or 2 in their division, and a lot higher in the conference as well. But I like what they did. If you're a Saints fan, feel good about what you did. Okay, that's a really strong draft for a team that feels like they're ready to contend right now. If Jameis Winston can step in and give them what they've been missing since Drew Brees exited, they feel like they can contend right now with that defense and Dennis Allen stepping in, DA stepping in as your head coach. They feel like they can compete right away, and why not? So let's see. Let's get to the next team in the division, and that's the Carolina Panthers, who checks in at number 3. And this is another bread, eggs, cheese, milk type draft. They just got inside of that 6-player window. But I thought they did some solid things. I actually like every one of their selections that they made, right? I have no problems with any of the picks, from Ekwangwu to Matt Corral. I love him as a quarterback. I told you he was my favorite quarterback in this year's draft class. Brandon Smith is a solid prospect out of Penn State at the linebacker position. Amari Barno is the explosive edge rusher out of Vatech, the guy that ran the fastest time in combine history for a edge rusher. Cade Mays, guard at Tennessee, is a solid pick, good value in the 6th round. And Kalon Barnes is a cornerback. And one thing we know about the Panthers and their head coach, Matt Rule, is that he likes athletes, speed. That's his thing. I can teach guys the fundamentals. I can't teach a guy how to run. I can't teach a guy to be quick and quick twitched. I can't teach a guy to be an athlete. You got to come equipped with that. I can do the rest. So everything you see here, from Ekwonu, I should say, to Corral, to Brandon Smith, to Barno, to Barnes, every one of these dudes are athletes at their respective positions, and among the best in this year's draft at their respective positions. So it's just athleticism and athletes, and they're looking to stockpile as many of those as possible. And so, and they're also solid football players at that. They're not just athletes. So, solid draft by the Panthers. Good enough for them to check in at number 3 in the division. As far as New Orleans is concerned, they're 15th in the conference because, again, they didn't have the requisite number of selections. And then the Panthers are 10th overall in the conference, 3rd in the NFC South. Checking in at number 2 in the division is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So Bucs are without a first-round pick. They traded out of the first round, allowed, I think it was the Jaguars, I think, that decided they wanted to come up and get the linebacker out of Utah. They wanted to draft the linebacker out of Utah, and so they came back into the first round. Tampa Bay instead shifted back to the second round, and I had no problems with that because they were looking defensive tackle. The value at that position, Devontae Wyatt was there at 27, where they resided initially, and had they not traded out of that, they could have gotten that select. They could have made that selection. They decided that Logan Hall fit what they wanted to do, and I love Logan Hall. He was one of my favorite defensive tackles in this draft. So trading back into the second round and getting Logan Hall, got no issues with that. Luke Gadecki, guard out of Central Michigan, love that pick in the second round. I did not love the Rachaad White pick in the third round. I thought this was way, way, way too early for him. There were so many other backs. Let's take a look at the backs that were available at the time of this pick. I thought there were at least 5 or 6 backs that were way better than him. And, you know, I would assume that they were looking to replace Ronald Jones and the speed that he brings to the table, which is fine. But I felt like there were other backs. Like, he wasn't the 4th best running back in this year's draft class. He just wasn't. I thought there were at least 5 or 6 backs that were better than him. Brian Robinson that went to Washington in the third round, a better back than Rachaad White. Now, he's not as fast as Rachaad White. Terion Davis-Price, I thought was better. He went to the 49ers in the third round. I thought Zamir White out of Georgia. Now, again, they got to fit your scheme. I thought Zamir White would have fit perfectly. He's like Leonard Fournette Jr., right? They call him Zeus. He would have been and he's a 4-4 guy, like perfect replacement for Leonard Fournette, right? If you say, okay, Leonard Fournette keeps coming back on these 1-year deals, at some point you're going to move on from him. Here's your replacement, Zamir White, staring you right in your face. You take this Rachaad White guy, wrong White. Isaiah Spiller, not the speed demon, but a better running back than Rachaad White. Hell, even Pierre Strong out of South Dakota State, to me, was a better running back than Rachaad White. So I thought that's where the cutoff was for me. You know, Damian Pierce is a guy that I love as a battering ram, physical running back, but I think Rachaad White is in that same neighborhood with him. But I did not think that he deserved to be the 4th best, the 4th running back taken off the board. But that's the thing where beauty's in the eye of the beholder. They love that guy. I did not. So I had to knock him a little bit for that. Cade Otton, tight end out of Washington. I love that pick. He's a Gronk replacement for you. Doesn't seem like Gronk. He's on the fence. I still say he comes back, but, you know, I think he's leaning towards retirement this time around. We'll see. You broke a rule. I got to slap you on the wrist. You stay violating this rule, by the way. Remember Roberto Aguayo? All right, remember the legend of Aguayo, okay? Yeah, you broke the rule then when you traded up to the second round to take Roberto the GOAT Aguayo, and now you're taking Jake Camarda, punter out of Georgia, in the 4th round. I got to slap you on the wrist. That's a no-no. That's a no-no. And had the Panthers draft been a little bit more expansive, I'd have bumped your ass down for this bullshit. I told you about doing this shit. No specialist before the 5th round. You didn't learn your lesson with the GOAT, and you come back and do it again, this time with a punter. I disapprove. Again, Zion McCollum is interesting in the 5th round, height, weight, speed specimen out of Sam Houston State. So that's a guy to keep an eye on there. But overall, I thought it was a solid draft by the Buccaneers. But I thought they violated a couple of times. Running back Rashad White in the 3rd round, 4th round punter Jake Camarda. Any specialist before the 5th round is a problem for me. I thought they were in violation multiple times. But, again, their division wasn't that great. New Orleans had a better draft, if you want to be honest, but because they didn't qualify, they come in 4th and you end up in 2nd. You easily would have been 3rd, maybe even 4th, had the Panthers had 1 or 2 more players that I really loved. But in any event, Buccaneers come in 2nd, and I have them 8th overall in the NFC. So the number 1 team in the NFC South is the Atlanta Falcons. Good for them. They need to win something, okay? They've been losing a lot here of late, whether it's football games, players, hope. There's been a lot of losing going on in Atlanta. So it's good to see them get a dub. This was a really strong draft class. One of those building block draft classes, if you will. Okay, you move on from Matt Ryan. So we don't even know what the next chapter of Atlanta Falcons football looks like, but we think it's going to begin with this 3rd round selection of Desmond Ritter. We'll talk about that in a second, but that's a 3rd round pick. We got to talk about the 1st and the 2nd round, and they did some serious damage in those 2 rounds. Now, I am not a Drake London fan. I'm just not. However, that doesn't mean the kid's not talented and that he might not be a stud at the next level. I just know that I didn't love him. I didn't want him on my team, but that doesn't mean he won't blow up for the Atlanta Falcons as a number 1 big-bodied possession wide receiver in a division that features Mike Evans and Michael Thomas and, guys like that that are big physical wide receivers. He might fit right in like hand in glove. They needed a receiver. They needed edge rusher. These are things they needed to address. Well, they addressed one with the receiver here. And they just traded for, I don't know if you guys saw this. They traded with the Raiders for wide receiver Bryan Edwards. I love it. I think Bryan Edwards was being overshadowed in Vegas, wasn't getting enough opportunities. He'll get more than his fair share. There are no receivers in Atlanta. So I love it. You add Drake London, you add Bryan Edwards, all of a sudden now it doesn't seem as bleak in Atlanta anymore. So I like the pick for them, Drake London. And I applaud them for taking him off the board and stopping my team because they were going to draft this kid from taking him at 11. So big ups to the Atlanta Falcons for that. Then you get Arnold Ebiketie in the 2nd round. And this is a guy that is one of the most raw edge rushers in the draft. But if he's able to put it together, we know Penn State produces athletes. We saw that with Jason Owe, a guy that had little to no production at at Penn State, comes into the league and he's damn near unblockable because he's long, athletic, and fast. So Arnold Ebiketie is going to have the same kind of impact. I think a guy that just needs, coaching, just needs to have some of those rough edges rounded off. But all of the athletic exploits are there with Ebiketie. So I love the pick. Edge rusher was, to me, the biggest need you had was edge rusher. Receiver was not that far behind. So you knock those 2 down with your first 2 picks of the draft. Then you get Troy Anderson, who arguably is the most athletically gifted linebacker in the entire draft. Played quarterback, played running back, played linebacker. And I told you the one thing the Falcons have done now, again, this is a different staff, so I don't know if they're going to be able to get the most out of his athleticism. But one thing the Falcons have routinely done is taken athletically gifted linebackers and gotten every single ounce of ability out of them. To me, there was a stretch in the league where Jones was one of the best linebackers in football. I love this game, and I was looking for a guy that looked like him. Troy Anderson has a chance to come in and be one of those types of guys, athletically gifted, that can run. They just allowed one of their athletically gifted linebackers to leave in free agency to the Jaguars. So Anderson will come in and have a chance to compete right away. I love the pick. Love the pick. Tremendous upside. He's got a lot to learn, but tremendous upside there. Desmond Ritter is the pick that most will talk about with this Falcons draft, and rightfully so. He's pegged as the quarterback of the future for the Falcons. And, I expect him to play in his rookie season. And Marcus Mariota, we all know, will not stay healthy for 17 games. It's not a matter of if Marcus Mariota gets hurt, it's when and for how long. The question is, do they have the confidence in Desmond Ritter to step in right away upon injury? Or do they have him as their third quarterback? They'll have a veteran or some other guy that they trust a little bit more to keep Desmond Ritter on ice so that he doesn't have to play sooner than he's ready. My money's on Ritter being ready, prepared. He's an older guy, a little bit more seasoned. I think he's focused. I think he's a guy that they feel confident that when his number's called, he'll be ready to step in and won't look back. So you can win football. I've said this already about Desmond Ritter. You can win football games with Desmond Ritter. He's just not a needle mover, okay? Alex Smith won a lot of football games in his career. He won a lot of divisions, okay? In San Francisco, in Kansas City primarily. They won the division almost every year with Alex Smith. All right, Washington won the division with Alex Smith quarterbacking the vast majority of their wins. You can win a lot of football games with game managers. Ryan Tannehill led the Tennessee Titans to the number 1 seed in the AFC last year, okay? You can win a lot of games with a game manager. There's nothing wrong with having one of these guys, a caretaker of the football. The problem is when you get to the postseason and everyone's good, including the quarterbacks now, you're going to need that guy to do something that he's not built to do. And that's outduel an elite quarterback or upstage a quality NFL defense week after week after week. He could do it once, maybe twice, but on the road to a Super Bowl, having to do it 3 times, 4 times, a guy like Desmond Ritter, unless you've got just an incredible supporting cast, a defense that is relentless, and an offense that just makes plays, he's not going to take you where you ultimately want to go. So I still like the pick. You needed to take a quarterback, you did, and he's a winner, if nothing else. So D'Angelo Malone in the 3rd round as well. I just like the fact that your first 5 picks come in the first 3 rounds. Like, that's great value. And D'Angelo Malone is another guy as an edge rusher. He's undersized, okay? Undersized, but he is as athletic as it gets, long as hell as well. So there's a lot to like between him and Arnold KT and D'Angelo Malone. I think those 2 guys give them some edge rushing presence. And you filled in all the gaps: linebacker, quarterback, wide receiver. You take Tyler Algier out of BYU, another guy that I actually really like. I think he's going to fit in beautifully to that backfield. I just thought there was a lot of good done here by the Atlanta Falcons in this draft for a team that needed a breath of fresh air, needed a dub, needed a win, needed a strong draft, needed a foundation. This is a foundational draft, if you ask me. Their 2nd-year GM, 2nd-year head coach. This is a foundational draft for them. If these guys turn out to be as good as I think they can be, that head coach and GM pairing will be around for a number of years potentially in Atlanta. So Falcons come in at number 1 and 5th overall in the NFC overall with their draft. So now we finish up with the NFC East. 2 teams made the playoffs. Both were eliminated right away. So now we jump into that division, and we start with the team that I felt like had the worst draft in the division, and that's the Dallas Cowboys. And generally speaking, they're usually at the top of this list in terms of the best drafts. The Cowboys get the draft. They draft well each and every single year. I didn't love their draft this year. Now, that's not saying that they didn't get some talented football players. They did get talented football players, but I'll explain to you why I don't love this draft. here in a second. But the draft was composed of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 players, which is typical of a Cowboys draft. You can see the Cowboys go anywhere from 8 to 11 players in a year. And like I said, they're one of the best drafting teams usually in the league. So this is not a surprise that they got 9 guys. That said, Tyler Smith, I don't love him. Let's start there. The tackle out of Tulsa. There's a lot of issues with him. I see him as a walking penalty. Now, they're going to kick him inside more likely than not at guard. And if they do that, he might be a force for them. But I see a lot of issues with hand placement. He's athletically gifted, but laterally, sometimes he doesn't move his feet well enough for me. Now, when you kick him inside and there's not as much space that he has to navigate, maybe that whole lateral quickness and movement doesn't come into play as much. And maybe the hand placement gets better, but he's a grabber. I watched tape and you're hard pressed to watch a game where this guy doesn't have 2 or 3 holding penalties. That's a problem for me because you take an 8-yard run and a 2nd and 2 and you turn it into a 2nd and 20 or a 1st and 20. You take a 3rd and 6 because you get beat and you're grabbing or your hands are outside of the framework. And you turn a 3rd and 6 into a 3rd and 16. I can't stand that. And I see him as a walking penalty. But he's got talent. But he's this misnomer, like him and his teammate. And his teammate was taken in the 7th round by Washington, Chris Paul. The difference between the two of them isn't as great as people like to make it out to be. One was a 1st round pick. The other was a 7th round pick. Now, I know why, Chris Paul was a 7th round pick. There's a lot of things that he needs to clean up. But Tyler Smith isn't that much better, if you ask me. That's just my personal opinion. I could be wrong about this kid. I could be wrong, flat out wrong about him. I don't love him. I didn't love Connor Williams when they took him. And everybody loved Connor Williams coming out of Texas. And I said, this guy stinks. And he stunk for Dallas. And he was a walking penalty. Everything that I saw on tape translated right to the NFL, and he continued to pick up penalties for the Cowboys, which is why they let him walk. And he's now in Miami. May the Miami Dolphins' soul be blessed because they signed him like he was going to come in there and change the game for them at guard. Bless their hearts. Sam Williams at defensive end, edge rusher. You lose out on Randy Gregory, who wanted to come back to Dallas, but there was some language in his contract that he wasn't fond of, and so he ended up signing with the Denver Broncos. So yeah, they lost out there. A couple years in a row that they've lost an edge rusher that was highly productive for them the year prior. If you recall, 2 years ago, they moved on from Quinn, the edge rusher that revitalized his career in Dallas, and then went on to have like 14 sacks last year for the Bears. And then they lose out on Randy Gregory. So they definitely have to replenish the edge rushing position. And they do that with Sam Williams now. Sam Williams doesn't play the run at all. All right. That's not what you're drafting him here for. But, a guy bagging 10.5 sacks in the SEC, double-digit sacks in the SEC, sign me up. So this is a guy, explosive, ran a sub-4 540, can get around that edge. But he's got to be a guy that either gets stronger and more pronounced in his approach to the run game, or they're going to have to only have him on the field initially in obvious passing situations. He's not ready to play consistently against the run. This is where things get interesting for me in their draft, that I start to like things because I don't love their first 2 picks, even though I don't have a problem with Sam Williams in the second. Jalen Tolbert, wide receiver out of South Alabama. I love this pick in the 3rd round. Perfect guy to come in and kind of pick up some of the slack. You lose Amari Cooper. No one guy is going to come in and replace Amari Cooper, not James Washington, but Jalen Tolbert and James Washington combined might be able to do that. And Tolbert is a guy that not only are you going to miss Amari Cooper, you're also going to be without Cedric Wilson. He's going to replace Cedric Wilson by himself is Jalen Tolbert. He's that good. So I love this pick. Love this pick. And the Cowboys, they are really good at identifying wide receiver talent, if nothing else. Jake Ferguson is something else that they're really good at, identifying tight end talent. Jake Ferguson is a tight end talent. They get him in the 4th round. I think that's good value. he's going to step in. And remember, they slapped the franchise tag on their tight end out of Stanford. I think this is his last year in Dallas, and they'll replace him with Jake Ferguson. So I like the pick there. The next pick that I like is Damone Clark in the 5th round. Now, anytime we start talking about, spinal fusions and things of that nature, I as a team, I'm probably backing off. I get it. This was the most productive linebacker in all of college football from a tackle standpoint. He was a leader on and off the field. I love Damone Clark. I wanted Washington to draft him despite the neck injury. Now, again, that can scare some teams away. And if you're Washington, you can't afford to take Damone Clark. Sorry, not sorry. With the injury concerns and the history and the track record you had with injuries and guys not being able to perform at the level that they're capable of due to injury, you just needed to stay away from a guy like that. But Dallas can afford to take a guy like this. They took Jalen Smith when nobody else wanted a piece of him and actually got good football out of him for about 4 years until they realized last year, all right, enough of this is enough, and moved on from him. But they were the ones willing to take the risk on him, and it proved to be huge, in terms of the dividends that it paid off for them. They're the team that takes the guy with the off the field issues. Sam Williams, speaking of off the field issues, is a guy, that had some sexual assault allegations on the campus of Ole Miss, and was actually suspended for a little, brief period there while that whole situation got sorted out. So, that's the kind of team. Dallas is the kind of team that can handle those types of things. Not everybody in the league can handle guys that come with baggage. Dallas is one of the best, in the league at handling players with baggage. And so Damone Clark, it doesn't come with off the field red flag baggage, but he does come with health concern baggage. And if he turns out to get healthy, that's a steal in the 5th round. Flat out steal, one of the best picks in the draft. John Ridgeway is another guy, the defensive tackle out of Arkansas, who I, really started to, become fond of at the Senior Bowl, is a guy that I like there as well. So all in all, I thought it was a really solid draft by Dallas. Their draft isn't indicative of a draft that I didn't necessarily love. Like, I didn't hate their draft. I didn't love the first 2 picks, right? But I liked a lot of what they did thereafter. But it's also indicative of the division that they're in too. I thought this division overall had a really strong draft altogether. So had they been in another division like the NFC West, for instance, this is probably the second best draft in that division. But they're in the NFC East, and I thought every team in this division actually had a quality draft. So the Cowboys come in at number 4 in 11th overall in the conference. Number 3 in the NFC East belongs to the Washington Commanders. So this was a strong draft for Washington. The lay fan from the outside looking in will say, hey, this is a really good draft. Don't know about your 2nd round pick, but man, I love the fact that you got Sam Howell in the 5th round, and you traded back, you got Jahan Dotson. But when you really dive deep into this draft, it's a senior laden group of players, with the exception of Sam Howell, guys that have played a ton of football that they think can come in and contribute right away, immediately. That's what they're looking for. I talked about Minnesota kind of missing the boat with them trading back and maybe not getting as many guys that can come in and help right away. We'll see. Maybe they do have guys that they felt really good about coming in and helping right away. But when you're a team that feels like you're in a position to win now, you're not looking for young guys that are going to have this, enormous learning curve. You want guys that you feel like can come in and immediately impact your football team, get on the field, and have an impact. And Jahan Dotson is going to do exactly that at the receiver position, their 1st round pick. Not to mention they traded back, picked up some draft capital. This was a team, if you weren't aware, came into this draft with only 6 picks. So the goal was to get to 8, and that's what they ultimately got to in this draft. So it took some maneuvering to do that. their GM, Martin Mayhew, made it a point of emphasis to say that he wanted to get, more draft picks in what he called the sweet spot of this draft, rounds 2 through 5. This is one of the deepest draft classes in recent memory, because of COVID-19 and all the guys that went back to school. And so there were a lot of quality draftable players that teams felt like they could get as starters in the 4th and into the 5th round. And so Washington came into the draft with only 2 picks in that sweet spot of the draft in rounds 2 through 5. They had a 2nd round pick and they had a 4th round pick. They didn't have a 3rd and they didn't have a 5th. So he aimed to change that, and that he did. And when Washington's draft was all said and done, of the 8 selections, 5 of those picks came in rounds 2 through 5. So he achieved the goal that he set out to get. Now, the Phidarian Mathis pick is one that, Washington fans still have a tough time stomaching with some of the talent that was available on the board at the time of the selection. But it was a definite need that the team had to address. And again, this was a position that wasn't very deep to begin with in this draft. So if you were going to take a defensive tackle, you needed to do it relatively early. Washington did that in the 2nd round. I don't have a problem with the pick, but again, it was one of those picks that you weren't really in love with. But outside of that selection, Brian Robinson, running back out of Alabama, tremendous pick in the 3rd round, gives them some more versatility and flexibility at the running back position and really shores up that position overall for them. Percy Butler, safety in the 4th round out of Louisiana, is a guy that they expect to come in and play right away and play multiple positions on the football field at safety for them. Sam Howell is probably the steal of the draft for them, and ultimately could turn out to be the steal of the entire draft when it's all said and done, depending on what he ultimately becomes in the league. This is a guy that a lot of people looked at as a potential 2nd round pick, no worse than a 3rd. He's still sitting there with the very first pick of the 5th round. And Washington, who had a 2nd round grade on Sam Howell, and if not for the Carson Wentz trade, would have selected him in the 2nd round more likely than not. So to get him in the 5th round, they felt really fortunate, and they should feel fortunate. This is the first time in a long time, probably since 2012, when Washington took 2 quarterbacks in that year's draft class, Robert Griffin III and Kirk Cousins, that they've had this kind of feel at the quarterback position. Like, if this first guy doesn't work, we got another guy sitting on ice waiting for an opportunity. So that was a hell of a pick. But then Cole Turner is a guy that has a lot of people excited, including head coach Ron Rivera. Kind of feels like Washington finally catching up with the rest of the league and moving into the 21st century at the tight end position. This is a move tight end, a guy that you can split out, has some length, has some pass catching ability, ex-wide receiver playing the tight end position at 6'6", tremendous catch radius, 10 touchdowns receiving last year for the Nevada Wolfpack. So this is a guy that they feel like can come in and help not only in the red zone, but just overall as a target on the football field. And then they finished up the draft with Chris Paul and Christian Holmes, a couple of guys that will provide depth on this roster should they make the football team. But overall, it's a really quality draft for Washington, getting positions of need knocked down, but also getting football players that they feel like can come in and help right away. Washington, 3rd overall in the NFC, 7th overall in the conference. You get to the number 2 team in the NFC East, and it's the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, I struggled with this because the Eagles only made 5 selections. And for that, I was ready to cast them and doom them to last place in this division in terms of their draft ranking and put them right down there with New Orleans as the 14th, best draft, just because they didn't meet the criteria. But if I'm being honest with myself, they drafted 5 players, and they also traded for A.J. Brown. He's a part of this draft class, whether you want to admit it or not. Gave him a big, lucrative deal. He's a part of this draft class. He's their 2nd first-round pick is A.J. Brown. So when it's all said and done, they drafted 6 players. All right. Jordan Davis, A.J. Brown, Cam Jurgens, Nakobe Dean, Kyron Johnson, and Grant Calcaterra. So for me, that's a tremendous draft. And it's just 6 players, okay? I'd like a little bit more, but that's the bare minimum, right? You get Jordan Davis, best defensive tackle in the draft. He's going to be a problem for many years to come. he's got the upside to turn into a double-digit sack getter, but he's right now a dominant defensive tackle against the run. So right out of the gate, he's going to come in and shore up what was a unit that was, I thought, somewhat underachieving last year, especially from a pass rushing standpoint. Cam Jurgens, AJ Brown, of course, is going to come in and be their number one wide receiver. So you already know that's a massive pick for them, one that they had to make because they didn't have a true number one. Even though Devontae Smith looks like he has the makings of a number one, I think they felt like they needed a sure thing. After whiffing on the first round pick a couple of years ago out of TCU, they needed to go get another guy, and they did that in AJ Brown. So now they have Jalen, they have AJ Brown. Now they have Devontae Smith, and now the rest of these guys can kind of fall into place wherever that may be for them. So Cam Jurgens, center, won't have to play necessarily this year, barring injury, but they've got the replacement of the future. Jason Kelce decided he wants to come back, play another year. That's good news for the Philadelphia Eagles. But Jurgens will be waiting in the wings when that time comes. And Kelce, who is a future Hall of Fame center, decides to hang it up. Cam Jurgens will be waiting to take over. Nakobe Dean is another steal in this draft. Was dealing with an injury that we weren't privy to going into the draft. We were wondering, why is this guy still around? And this is a first-round talent. He lasts to the third round. Eagles get a steal here. If he's healthy, that's first-round talent you get in the third round. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. Team leader type of guy, gets everyone lined up. Not the greatest athlete. I think that a lot of people saw that on tape, and he's already undersized as is, and that kind of turned them off. But I've always said the one position on the field that is a position that requires you to be somewhere in a hurry, but you don't have to be fast to get there in a hurry, is linebacker. Like, we want receivers to be fast. We want tight ends to be fast. We want safeties and corners to be fast. We want edge rushers to be fast. Linebackers don't have to be fast. They have to be instinctual. They have to know what's coming before it comes and get there. And Nakobe Dean's one of those dudes that just knows how to find the football. So love that pick. Kyron Johnson in the 6th round, linebacker out of Kansas. It's depth, not really tripping there. Grant Calcaterra, I love that pick in the 6th round. And now, there's some issues with his health. Concussions were something that ran him off from football when he was at Oklahoma. He sat out a year, came back, played at SMU, and played well there. Another athletically gifted tight end to add to the mix in Philadelphia at the tight end position. They've got a ton of tight ends, and he'll be among the best in terms of pass catchers. We'll see if he can stay healthy. If he could do that, that's a good selection in the 6th round for the Philadelphia Eagles. So all in all, because of the A.J. Brown addition to this draft, it allows the Eagles to steer clear of not being eligible to be graded and ranked. And it also makes them one of the better drafts in not only the NFC East, but the conference overall. Eagles come in at number 2 in the NFC East and number 6 overall in the conference. And that leads us to our number 1 team in the NFC East. And that's the New York Giants. So really, the Giants killed us, and everyone really for that matter, with just not only quality, but just quantity. So sheer number of picks, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 selections. But unlike some teams that we've seen with like 11 picks, and then I think one team that had 11, I want to say it was the Bears, 6 of them were 6th or 7th round, 3 in the 6th, 3 in the 7th. That is not the case. The Giants don't have a single 7th round pick. They only have 1 selection in the 6th, and the other 10 selections are in rounds 1 through 5. So they did a lot of damage in the rounds that mattered in this draft, and they actually got a really good collection of football players. Really top to bottom, this draft is really solid. It starts with Kayvon. And look, again, this is what happens. The same thing we talked about with the Bears with 11 players. The Vikings had like 9 selections. This is what you get when you get a new GM. All right, a new guy coming in looking to turn the tide, to put his stamp on a roster. Joe Shane is now the new GM in New York. And he's got a new head coach that he brought from Buffalo with him. And so now you're looking to make this thing look like the way you envision it looking. And it's going to take a lot of time and a lot of turnover, but it starts in the draft. So it started with Kayvon Thibodeau. You know, you pair him up with Azeez Ojulari, who you took last year in the 2nd round. And all of a sudden now that's a formidable group off the edge. Evan Neal, who I thought was the best tackle in this year's draft class, out of Alabama. You get him 7th overall. Remember, the Giants had 2 top 10 picks. Then you turn around, Wan'Dale Robinson, wide receiver in the 2nd round out of Kentucky. Now, this pick I did not love. I got no problems with Wan'Dale Robinson. I think he's a better receiver than people think. He's small, so you see that, this diminutive guy. He's tough as nails, first of all. He's an all-purpose demon. You can give it to him as a running back. You can throw it to him in the quick game and let him go run after the catch because he turns into a return man with the ball in his hands. But he's also capable of running routes, separating, and then run after the catch is deadly. There's a lot to like here. To me, he's too much like a guy that's already on the roster in Kadarius Toney. So what that says to me is that they're at wit's end with Kadarius Toney. Like, they want him around, but if he doesn't want to follow protocol, if he doesn't want to be a part of the program, if they can't get him to buy in, Wan'Dale Robinson is their insurance policy. You know, sort of like the Kansas City Chiefs eons ago when Tyreek Hill was having issues. Remember, he had that phone call that was recorded with his baby mama, and it sounded like, this could be the Mike, the other shoe dropping. Remember when he was drafted into the league, Tyreek Hill had some off the field issues, which is why he fell down draft boards. And we're thinking, here goes Tyreek Hill getting in trouble. And just in case he couldn't keep his nose clean, they drafted the Georgia wide receiver with all that speed just to give them another option in the event that Tyreek Hill couldn't keep himself available. I think that's what this Wan'Dale Robinson pick is all about. They see promise in Kadarius Toney and what he could be for them in that offense. And they don't want to be without a guy like that. So Wan'Dale Robinson makes a ton of sense for them. Now, if Kadarius Toney gets his act together, and I think I just saw somewhere that Kadarius Toney is dealing with an injury that I think requires surgery, if I'm not mistaken. If he's able to get his act together, if he's able to show the Giants that he's actually serious about playing football and wants to be a part of their program, what's better than 1 explosive, dynamic athlete with the football in his hands? 2. So they're not going to be upset if Kadarius Toney gets his act together. But they're prepared in the event that he doesn't. So I didn't love the pick, though. I'm just going to be honest with you. There were other guys that, were available that made them a little bit more sense. But I don't hate the pick either. Joshua Ezeudu, guard out of North Carolina. I thought it was a little early for him. Don't have a problem with him. Solid football player. I thought he was more of a 5th round pick, though. I thought he was a day 3 pick for sure. So I thought it was a little early for him. I love the Cordell Flott pick. He was a slot corner at LSU. They called him Flott the Slot. He's going to be exceptional for them. This is a fearless corner, doesn't back down from anybody. He's about 180 pounds soaking wet, but he'll come and stick his nose in run support whenever it's needed. And he plays a sticky brand of coverage, very aware in zone. And then again, this is a guy that, I put stock into this. In practice, he went against, the likes of Justin Jefferson. He went against Jamar Chase and guys like that at LSU for years. That iron sharpens iron. So I love that pick of Cordell Flott in the 3rd round. Daniel Bellinger is the perfect tight end for the Giants. He's probably one of the better run blocking tight ends in the entire draft. He also can catch the football. San Diego State, I've said this numerous times, they don't always work out in the league, but they're a factory at the tight end position because they play in a pro-style offense at San Diego State, which is why we've seen all these running backs come from that program. They run the football a ton. Their tight ends have to be able to block in line as true inline wide tight ends. But they also, because they run block, because they run a pro style offense, the tight end also gets the football in that offense. So Daniel Bellinger is a guy that I really like in this draft, and I think he's the perfect fit for this Giants offense. Dane Belton at the safety position from Iowa. I love this pick as well. He's another talented safety. I thought this was really talented safety draft class. And Dane Belton in the 4th round is good value, makes sense, helps a position of need. They moved on from safety Jabril Peppers this offseason. And so it makes a ton of sense that a guy like Dane Belton is the selection here in the 4th round for the Giants. You know, another guy that is an athletic guy with some size, similar to Jabril Peppers. Remember, Peppers wasn't the tallest guy. Peppers was like a 5'11 type guy. Maybe, 5'11 was probably more accurate. But he was like a 210, 15-pound safety that could run. Jabril Peppers had a little bit of size on him, and he also could run. He was an athlete. Dane Belton is a similar size guy, but he's a little bit, taller, like 6'6", 6'1", with rating at 205, 210 range, and he can run. He's a sub 4.5 guy, low 4.4. So there's a lot to like with Dane Belton. I like his athleticism. I love his toughness. And I think he's going to be a solid pick for the New York Giants. Michael McFadden, linebacker out of Indiana, is an interesting pick. Here's a guy that was a captain at Indiana, helped turn that program around. He's a guy that plays on the opposite side of the line of scrimmage. If nothing else, he'll be a core special teamer and a quality backup behind Blake Martinez. But he looks like Blake Martinez to me. He does. So even Darian Beavers in the 6th round out of Cincinnati is a guy that is a solid late round linebacker. I just thought this was a quality draft, top to bottom. And we know the Buffalo Bills were one of the best drafting teams in all of football, which is why they're one of the most complete teams and one of the most talented teams in all of football as we speak. Bringing over their brass, someone that was a part of that brain trust in the process over there and the decision-making process, it's not a surprise that the Giants have one of the better drafts in the NFC with the Buffalo Bills brain trust coming over, or piece of their brain trust coming over here and pulling the strings for the Giants. So the Giants number 1 in the NFC and 4th overall in the conference. So that is the NFC draft rankings. We now transition to our next segment of the show, which is social media maneuvers. I'm a midday marauder, or in this case, I'm a midnight marauder. Looking forward to reading your comments. If you're out there and you want your comment to be read, you know the routine. For those of you who do not, super chats are the way to jump to the front of the line. So those go first. After we knock out the super chats, we then get to the hashtags. You want your comment read? If it is pertinent, use the hashtag LouieTLive to have your comment read, and we will knock out your comment. So with that said, let's get to the comment section of tonight's show. And we start off with Journey Reed. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you, Journey Reed. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB, who writes, heard the stadium is supposed to be translucent and change from white during the day to burgundy at night. That sounds hard. I can't lie. Hashtag Mob Squad. That all of that sounds great until there's, first of all, can we find somewhere to build it? That's number one. Like, they could talk about the stadium could morph into a globe that engulfs the other team and automatically gives Washington a win. That's great, but where are we building it at? They still got to figure this stuff out. And to me, it doesn't make a ton of sense to build a new stadium if there hasn't been a decision made on Daniel Snyder. So that's the perfect segue. We'll come back to your comment, Journey Reed. Daniel Snyder, let's talk about it real quick. I don't want to spend a lot of time on this because, again, you guys know how I feel about this. This is a non-issue until it's an issue. I've been saying what they just said the other day, that Daniel Snyder is on the hot seat and owners are counting votes now. They're getting to that point where, they weren't necessarily counting votes. They might have been rolling their eyes. They might have been sighing every time, but they weren't to the point where they were fed up and they were counting votes. Reportedly, that's where they are now. Look, I said this 2 years ago. I said it last year when we thought we had a chance to get his ass out of there, when the Washington Post article was supposed to come out. I've been talking about this for a long time. Okay, 2-3 years now. It's not going to be one incident with Daniel Snyder. There's no smoking gun. If there were, it would have already emerged and we would already be from underneath his reign of terror. There is no smoking gun, okay? There isn't one incident that's going to get this man removed as owner of the Washington Commanders. However, I've been saying this since, this has become a real thing. And that's, we're talking 2-3 years ago when this thing started to heat up a bit. The only way he's going to be pushed out as owner is if the other owners they become fatigued. Every year, and at some point, and I've been saying this, and this has been my rallying cry, at some point, because it's always something with this organization and specifically Daniel Snyder. It's always something. Every year at the NFL owners meeting, the annual meeting that they have in April, every year, and that's when Roger Goodell, and at the Super Bowl, Roger Goodell also has a state of the league, address, essentially, right? So he speaks for like 30 minutes to an hour about various topics, the direction of the league, things of that nature. Any hot button topics, when Brady had the whole Deflate Gate, he spoke about that. Anything that is pertinent to the league. Deshaun Watson was a topic of discussion this year. He speaks of. Every year, there's about a 15-minute segment of his briefing about Washington. Why? Because every year it's something new with them, and that gets old. First it was the name, okay. Then it was, and that's not in Snyder's control. That it was. He could have changed it, but he didn't want to, and then finally he did. Okay, so that was something that he had to always talk about. Okay. Then you get to the sexual misconduct and the improprieties that happened at the workplace. That was a sore eye on the league and something that they really didn't want to talk about, but they had to. They had an independent investigation that was a farce. It started out with Snyder hiring Beth Wilkinson. Then the league was like, that's not a good look. Maybe we should take over the investigation. Makes it look a little bit more legit. There are actually no papers. You have an investigation that takes a year to conduct and complete, yet there's actually no paperwork. There's no manifesto. There was like 500 pages to the Ted Wells Deflategate report, but there's a year-long probe into an organization that has as much dirt and grime and filth in it as Washington, and there is no manifesto. There's no booklet. There's nothing. Yeah, right. So that was a joke, right? But still had to discuss that. You have these women who are like, you haven't done enough. You haven't done enough. You haven't done enough. We step forward. We put our necks out on the line. You haven't done enough. So they keep speaking out. Then you get the financial, accusations that they've been hiding money from the rest of the owners, and they've been, keeping. And if you're hiding money from the other owners, that means you're not sharing the money with the players in the league. And so that's an issue, from some of the stadium tickets that they've been selling and things of that nature. So that's a whole nother issue. And there's always something with this organization. All right. Always something. It was the cheerleading incident. They've had two separate cheerleading scandals, by the way. One that they had, back in the day that was broken by the New York Times, and then or the New York Post, and then another one where they were reportedly, they had, photos of the cheerleaders that in like a cut up video made specifically for Dan Snyder when they were naked, and shots of them and all kinds of inappropriate stuff. Like it's just always something with this organization. And at some point you just get tired. If you're Roger Goodell, your job is to defend, protect, and serve the owners. And you do as they ask you to do. And at some point, these owners, I know Goodell's like, look, you pay me an inordinate amount of money to just do my job. So if you want me to keep dodging questions about Daniel Snyder and keep talking around the issues and talking in circles, I can do that all day long. I've been doing it for the last decade plus. But at some point, if not me, and Goodell's on his last legs, remember, he said he's retiring after this contract runs out. The next guy's going to have to continue to answer questions about Washington and Daniel Snyder in particular. And it's just a headache. You just get tired of doing this if you're an NFL owner. You're tired of answering Daniel Snyder questions. The Washington market is the most fertile and ripe for growth in the NFL, which sounds crazy because it's one of the largest media markets in the NFL. It's one of the largest media markets in sports. Okay, you kill to have the Washington market doing well, but they can never capitalize on that in the NFL because of the black cloud hanging over that organization that is named Daniel Snyder. So to me, it's not going to be one individual thing that gets this guy ousted. It's ultimately going to be them just growing fatigue of having to continue to talk about this guy, the black cloud that he brings over the league, the negativity that his organization continues to have on this league. And then again, we've talked about this. I don't know if there's any truth to the financial improprieties that we've heard about them, potentially having two separate books, one that shows that they're sharing the money properly with the league, and then the other books that apparently show them hoarding money and keeping it away from the other 31 owners. And again, if you're withholding money from the owners, you're withholding money from the players in the collective bargaining agreement. So they would be in violation of a lot. But one thing I've always learned in my lifetime is that rich people don't like having money kept from them, money that they feel like is theirs. One thing the rich love is being richer, and they don't play with their money. And so if there is any validity to Daniel Snyder, look, you can have all of these sexual misconduct allegations and all the stuff that I've talked about. That shit goes out the window. We're talking about money now. Your ass got to go. So they're getting to the point now where they're sick and tired of being sick and tired. Is it enough? I don't think so. I think there are a number of owners that are like, get his ass out of here. There might be 14 of them that feel that way. Well, you need 24 for his ass to be gone. I don't think you're getting 24. So anyway, I said all of that to say this. In regards to the stadium, I can't stand Daniel Snyder as an owner. I don't know him personally. Sounds like he's a piece of work. But he was stuck. He was hampered by Jack Kent Cook wanting to get FedEx Field up before he died. He threw it together last minute. It felt rushed. It wasn't in a great location. It wasn't a well-built stadium. It was brand new in 96, and it felt like the 13th or 14th oldest stadium, and it was the newest stadium. It wasn't a well-built stadium in a good area, in a transient area. There was nothing good about the stadium, period, since its inception in 96. 96, 97, somewhere in that window. So one thing Snyder and company had against them when they bought the team was they had to inherit FedEx. It sucked. Why would you saddle a new owner if that is potentially something that you're pondering over as the rest of the owners in the league? Why would you saddle a new owner with a destination in a stadium that he doesn't love? Like, I just feel like if you're going to move on Snyder, do it pronto so that, because they're looking to break ground like that. The lease on the stadium that they're currently at runs out in 2027. Like, stadiums aren't built overnight. They need to be able to break ground on wherever they're going to build this stadium and start the process now, so we're not playing in the parking lot in 2027, in the 2028 season, waiting for the stadium to be finished. But I mean, I think that's something that has to go into the decision-making process. Is Daniel Snyder going to own the team? Right now, I just say, conduct business as usual. Daniel Snyder's the owner. He's not going anywhere. And as far as the stadium turning colors at night, that would be dope. As long as it's a dome and it can close and it's retractable, and it's not as big. I don't need 80,000 seats. He was being greedy. They put more seats in. They don't sell it out, and when it is remotely close to a sellout, is because 80% of the fans are from the opposite fan base. Need to make it more intimate. This should be a stadium that seats 65,000. It shouldn't seat 72 or 81 or anything crazy like that. This isn't Jerry's World. This should be a more intimate setting. And so we'll see what this stadium looks like. I mean, if some of the reports, and I've seen the photos that you're probably referring to in the little model, it looked dope. I'm not gonna lie to you. It was a nice looking stadium, but we'll see what happens. Eric DeBose, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. My guy Eric writes, thanks, bro, for the constant great content. Blessings to you and your fam. Likewise, Eric. I like national media underselling Carson Wentz like he's buns. Fly under the radar to a great season. I don't watch a lot of the national stuff. A lot of the stuff that I do watch, it's usually because somebody sent it to me. I don't get into that very often because I don't care what they're talking about. We know more about our team than they do. A lot of these national pundits, they're not watching us individually. They don't have a pulse and a feel of what's going on. We follow this team on a day-to-day basis. We live, eat, sleep, and breathe this team. So I'm not too concerned nor moved by what the national talking heads have to say. That said, Carson Wentz to me is a microcosm of what this team is going into the season. There's not a lot of excitement about the Commanders this year from the outside. I think we're looked upon as a team that is continuing to build. Nobody believes in Carson Wentz. Nobody believes in this team. We underachieved grossly last year by a lot of people's standards. And so now the Eagles and the Cowboys have overtaken us, and we're an afterthought. And that's where Carson Wentz is in his career. He's an afterthought. Okay, cool. I have no problems with playing this role. Change the narrative. You know what? I told you that's my rallying cry for the season. Change the narrative. We'll see what happens. I'm looking forward to it, man. But I appreciate you for your support. And I look forward to chopping it up with you in the future. Dejan Bell, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. My guy Dejan writes, our draft class really growing on me. That's why I always advocate that you don't have a knee-jerk reaction to a draft right away, especially when you haven't done the work. If you've done the work and you have a handle on like 380 prospects, so you can speak candidly on anybody that's selected in real time, I'm listening. My ears are open. I want to hear what you have to say. But the vast majority of you, and I'm just as guilty as most of you, I haven't done the work on all of these guys. I try, but I got a life, and my life doesn't revolve around watching college football tape all day, every day throughout the college football season and into the off season. I got other shit going on. So when I get to it, and generally I don't get to all of it. So I know most of the players, but I don't know all of them. So when they make a move like Phidarian Mathis, I'd be lying to you if I said I knew what Phidarian Mathis's game was. But I said I can guess because I watched a ton of Alabama football. I've watched him play. Indirectly, I haven't watched him focused in, zeroed in on him. But trust me, seen one, seen them all. I kind of know what this guy's all about. And I told you what he was. And then I went and watched, and it was confirmed, right? Percy Butler was a guy I hadn't watched previous to him being selected, but I was intrigued. I wanted to see what they had taken. I had already watched Cole Turner and already watched Sam Howell and already watched Brian Robinson and already watched Jahan Dotson. So I could speak very candidly on those guys because I had already watched them. But I had told you guys, this is not a bad draft. You should feel really good about what we had done. But again, when you want what you want, it doesn't matter what they've done. They didn't do what you wanted them to do, so it's not a success, or you're upset. And then you have time to sit on it. You watch these guys, you watch their highlights. You're like, oh, this guy's nice, yada yada yada. Next thing you know, oh, I really like the draft. Well, that's good. I'm glad you've come around. But again, this is why I always tell you, just relax. Don't overreact to the picks initially, especially when you have no idea what these players are capable of. But I'm glad the draft class is growing on you, because you were one of those people on draft night. Remember, I had to attach you to my hip. I told you, stay with me, man. I'm gonna school you, because you was in your bag. You was definitely in your pocket that night. I told you, relax. I got you, and look where you are now. All right. I like the progress, young fella. Keep it up. Deshaun Bell, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Double up. Thank you for doubling up. Deshaun Bell, who writes, I hope we hear that a lot of players showed up to OTAs. For us to be the best version of ourselves this year, we got to be abnormal. I think most of the guys are going to show up. Obviously, Terry isn't showing up until he gets his contract resolved, and nor should he. And outside of Terry, I'd like to think that everybody else is going to be there. There's no one else in a contract dispute right now or waiting for a long-term deal. Everyone else pretty much on board for the upcoming season, and I expect them there. So I'd be shocked if we heard, other than someone having a family emergency or something along those lines, I expect everyone to be there. It's only for a few days. Like, your schedule's not that busy. You can't come to work for 3 days, right? So I expect everyone to be at this mini camp, again, Jack Del Rio made a big stink about, everyone not being there last year and that really affecting the defense. I don't know about all that. Again, I don't know the importance of these, minis. I don't think they're as important, but it won't hurt for these guys to show up. I do know that. It can only help. It can't hurt to be at these minis. I do know that. Rich, Alex Collins, thank you. That was the Seahawks running back that, was a ballet dancer and did all of that other stuff and was with the Ravens at first and had to, take some spot duty with the Seahawks. Alex Collins, thank you. Metaphor, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you, my guy, Metaphor. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. Writes, I often pray before I lay down by the sideline. If you receive the ball before I'm sacked, could I make it through the line? Cherish the team we have. Cherish. Okay, the team we have. I hear you, Metaphor. I hear you once again, man. And I gotta say too, I think it's you. You're a big Jodeci fan, aren't you? You stay dropping some Jodeci lyrics on us. You seem like you're a huge Jodeci guy. Anyway, we're gonna have to get into some of this R&B, man. We're gonna have to get into some of this R&B. Anyway. Let's see. I think I got another super chat. I do. I see 2 right there. I think that's it. See those 2. Yeah. So let's knock those 2 out. James Johnson, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. My guy, Double J, writes, what's up, Lou? What's up, James? Says, first time chatter. Haha. And I knew that. I don't recall seeing your name, but it's always refreshing when somebody finally comes from out of the shadows and speaks. Again, I am a notorious lurker, so I know the feeling. It's great talking to you, James. He says, I want to know where you would rank us in the NFC conference. PS, smash that like button, y'all. So you want our draft or our team overall? Again, I've already given us a draft ranking. We are 7th in the draft in the conference. If you want to know where I feel like we are as a team, I mean, I'm looking at the teams right now, and we're not better than Green Bay, even though we could be, but they got Aaron Rodgers, so I'm going to show them the proper respect. We're not better than Tampa Bay. Depending on what Jameis Winston shows up, we're probably not better than New Orleans because their defense is legit. But they're kind of right where we are, because our defense could be just as good as theirs with the schedule that we play, and our quarterback could be just as good as theirs, if not better. So they're kind of on the same playing field as us. We're not better than Dallas right now or Philadelphia. Both of those teams made the playoffs, but I think we're better than Philadelphia because I think we got a better quarterback than them. But so for the sake of this argument, let's put Philly below us and Dallas ahead of us. So Green Bay, Tampa Bay, Dallas are all ahead of us. The Rams are ahead of us. The 49ers and the Seahawks, the 49ers and the Cardinals are ahead of us as well. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That will put us 7th. There's 7 teams that make it to the playoffs. That will put us 7th. We're in there somewhere, okay? Now, just because we're 7th doesn't mean we'll be the 7th seed. Anything can happen. We could win the division. We could be the first wild card. Anything could happen, but I got a 7th in the draft, and I got a 7th overall in the conference right now. And we could easily be 9. I don't think we're any worse than 9. New Orleans and Philadelphia could be ahead of us, but I have both of them right kind of where we are. So I'm going to give us the benefit of the doubt because I think our quarterback is better than both of their quarterbacks. So I got us at 7th. Thank you for the super chat. Alex, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. My guy Alex writes, you see RG3 said Commanders are Super Bowl contenders if Wentz plays well. Hilarious. As far as how the NFC East teams utilize their picks, Eagles, Giants, Dallas, Washington. I obviously disagree with the way you see the picks being utilized. I heard what Robert Griffin III said. Again, that's his job. His job is to create headlines. His job is to move the needle. Status quo doesn't move the needle, which is why people love Skip Bayless and they love Shannon Sharp and they love Stephen A. Smith because they say outlandish things. They move the needle because either they're right and they're going to be braggadocious about being right, or they're wrong and you want to see them eat crow, and that's why you tune in. But, just kind of playing it safe down the middle, that doesn't get you promoted within the ranks of ESPN. You don't rise to the tops of the of the 4-letter annals, if you will, by being towing the proverbial line, if you will. You got to say some things that may surprise some people, and most people think that he can't stand Washington because of how it ended there. So one way to dispel that is to say, I think they're actually going to be good, but he may actually believe that. I don't know if he believes that or not. I'm not buying any of the hype. Last year, a lot of people fell for the hype, hook, line, and sinker. Yeah, Greeny and Rich Eisen and all kinds of people telling everybody, look out for Washington with Ryan Fitzpatrick. Yeah, right. Give me a break. I'm not falling for any of that. I didn't fall for it last year, and I would advise Washington fans to steer clear of any of that nonsense this year. If it's going to happen, let it happen organically. Don't try to force it. Last year, we tried to force it, and it wasn't going to happen. Again, I don't watch any of that stuff, but I did hear about it. It did end up on my timeline. I did see it, but it didn't move me one way or the other. I just said that's Robert doing his job, and continuing to to create excitement about what he does at ESPN. And the fact that an Eagles fan is super chatting about it right now means he did his job. It got you talking about it, or at least you to think, man, this guy's crazy. That's all he's looking to do. He wants you to feel some type of way. That's how the Stephen A. Smiths, that's how the Skip Baylesses and the Shannon Sharps of the world maneuver. Colin Cowherd. They want you to feel some type of way. If you're indifferent, they haven't done their job. Okay? They either want you to hate them or love them, agree with them, or vehemently disagree with them. Either way, it's a win for them if you feel some type of emotion. When you don't feel any emotion, they haven't done their job adequately, and they're not going to get the ratings that they seek. So Robert is just doing his job, and I actually think he's doing a really good job, and I knew he would be really good at this. He was always a good soundbite, always. So there's no doubt that I thought he'd be good at this. Metaphor, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Double up. Thank you for doubling up. Metaphor. Hold on. I actually skipped over some. So let's go back, way back into time. Tony P56. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. My guy, Tony P56, writes, I really enjoyed the Commanders Holy Trinity episode. You, Ed, and Rico. Are we going to have to wait until next year to be blessed again? Ain't no telling. Ain't no telling. As a wise man once told me, ain't no telling. Ain't no telling. We'll see. Again, everybody's busy. Everybody's got their own thing going on. If it were up to me, and it is up to me, I'll ensure that it happens before then. Took long enough for it to happen. And now that it has happened, the ice has been broken. I don't see why it can't happen, more than once every so often. So you'll get another one. I can't tell you exactly when, but you'll get another one. All right. It won't be a full year. Trust me. I can assure you of that. How about that? Excuse me. Glad you enjoyed it. I enjoyed having those guys on. I'm glad they were able to sit through that 5-hour marathon of a show, but they were sports about it, and they were outstanding, man. Loved it. John Perez, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. My guy, John Perez, JP, writes, Lou, I'm telling you, Snyder is going to be gone. It'll be even more bittersweet than when Bruce Allen was fired in 2019, which I predicted, by the way. Why would it be bittersweet? There's no bitter to this sweet. This shit is nothing but sweet. I feel like when he gets canned, or when owners finally decide to get him out of there, if that day ever comes, it'll be like swimming in a sea of simply apple juice for me. Okay, that's all I drink is simply apple juice, and all of the Simply products. It'd be like swimming in a sea of Simply Apple, 100% cold pressed apple juice. Delicious. Ain't nothing bittersweet about that. Bittersweet means on one hand you're excited, on the other hand you're kind of melancholy, like, oh man, that sucks. Ain't no bittersweet. It's gonna be awesome. James Johnson, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Double up. Thank you for doubling up. Double J, who writes, yeah, overall, and hashtag team lurking. You know what it is. You know what it is. It takes one to know one. I know a lurker when I see one, and there's nothing wrong with that. I'm getting better at that. My other channel has forced me to come from behind the shadows, and I have to comment because that's what they do in that community. So I can't just lurk. I can't just watch a video, hit the like button, and proceed. I have to leave a comment. So I'm getting better at that. And I'm starting to comment on Twitter. Twitter, I almost treat Twitter like IG. I just scroll down my timeline. If I see something that I know the comment section is going to be wilding in, I click on it just to read the comments. but I won't leave a comment myself. I'm actually starting to leave comments under other people's comments. Like, what a novel concept. So I'm getting out of my shell a little bit, just a little bit. Thank you for the super chat, James Johnson. Metaphor. Now we can go, double up, thank you for doubling up. Metaphor. Greatly appreciate you. My guy says, conversation is going around. People talking about Commanders coming to town. Lovely unis, pretty as can be. No one knows our name. We just the DMV. Hey, metaphor. Dropping the bars on us again. All right. I like it. I like it a lot. I like it a lot. All right. Let's see. All right. I think that was the last super chat. So we'll take a couple of hashtags. And then we'll go to our final segment of the show. Rich writes, finally made a late night pod. I assume the life stick hit you today. A little bit, not in the way that it did the week that I didn't have a pod at all when I was trying to get on. But it hit me a little bit today. Not in I could have still did one earlier, but it wasn't in the cards. I didn't need to force it. Rich also writes, Lou, I know you trained me not to fall for all this Snyder news, but I think this one has a little validity. But you trained me well because I still don't think Snyder's going anywhere soon. And again, I don't want to be the one that convinces you to not, believe, but you've seen it with your own eyes. You've been duped enough to know. And I all it takes is one time. All you got to do is get me one time. They got me one time. They allowed my imagination to run wild. I mean, before the article came out from the New York Times or from the Washington Post, excuse me, they allowed my imagination to run wild. We're over here talking about, prostitution rings, drug-induced late night parties, bribing officials. I mean, I was like, man, we are really trying to put this man 6 feet under the NFL owners, situation. Like, not only is this man out as an owner, we trying to have this man brought up on federal charges on the way out. And I that's not what I'm looking for. I don't want to hurt Daniel Snyder as an individual. I care less about what he does outside of being the owner. If he were not the owner of the Washington Commanders, I wouldn't give two shits about Daniel Snyder and his wife Tanya at all. Just keeping it a buck with you. The only reason I give a shit about who he is, which is why he's never going to sell the team, is because this is his identity. Without this team, he's just Daniel Snyder, a schmuck that nobody cares about. But because he owns Washington, he gets to rub, elbows with Matthew McConaughey and Tom Cruise and guys that would have just, stepped on him to get where they were trying to go because he would have been a peon to them, even though he would have had money. I don't know. You get out of my face. Now he's a guy with power and status, and that's what this team represents for him, and he's not going to get rid of it. So unless they force him out, he's not going anywhere. So don't fall for the banana in the tailpipe. I fell for it that one time, and then the article came out, and it was some pretty damning shit in that article. But because we were allowed to have our imaginations run wild, we were thinking about, oh my God, there's no way. It's almost like Coming to America 2. There was no way that movie could live up to the hype, right? The first movie came out in 1988. There was no way you were going to make a movie 32 years later and have it meet the hype. Impossible. There was no way that article that we had made up in our minds was going to meet. And they knew that. And that's why I kind of felt like it was staged. Like Daniel Snyder had his people put out those rumors, even though he was suing people overseas for spreading those rumors. Those rumors actually helped lessen the impact of an article that was pretty damn disgusting. So anyway, I said all of that to say this. I'm glad that you get it. You know, JP is out there thinking that this is the one. This is the time. JP thought it was the time last time and the time before that and the time before that and the time before that. But you know what? JP's gonna take credit for saying, I told you, even though it took him 15 times to be right, I told you he was gonna get pushed out as owner. They're gonna get rid of his ass. Well, JP, eventually, if he keeps having shit happen and keep having allegations and rumors, yeah, they are gonna get rid of his ass. And you will be right at some point. But until then, I ain't buying what anybody's selling. Daniel Snyder is going to be the owner of this organization until he no longer is capable of being the owner. So, smart man, Rich. Smart man. Rich says, I know you don't care, but if the stadium is in Woodbridge, I'm highly upset. I live in DC. That's an hour and 20-minute drive without traffic. That's like 2 hours with traffic. Not a fan at all. I'm loving Woodbridge. If they put it in Prince William County or Woodbridge, that's right up the street from the kid. I'm loving it. Like McDonald's. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba. I'm loving it. Now, if you're in DC or Maryland, sucks to be you. It ain't me. So, and it look, wherever they put the stadium, I'm not going to complain about it because I'm not a normal game attender. I'm not a game goer. So, it's not going to affect me as much. But if I decide, if the spirit hits me, it moves me, and I feel the need to show up at whatever the name of this new field is going to be called, it'd be nice if it was 25 minutes away from me. That'd be great. And yeah, look, it's traffic. You're not going to be able to avoid it. I don't care where you put this stadium. You put this stadium in Dumfries, you put this stadium in Woodbridge, you put it in Prince William County, you put the thing, 2 miles from the Capitol, wherever the hell you put this thing, it's going to be traffic. Period. End of discussion. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. So I actually prefer it to be in Woodbridge because it's right up the street. But hey, it is what it is. Hey, go ahead. Let's see. Reese says, Todd Bowles looks like a dude who asks to see the manager at a department store, but not to complain, just to compliment how well the staff is doing. I don't like that one. I don't like that one. I don't see Todd. First of all, Todd doesn't talk unless he has to talk. So I don't see Todd requesting to talk to a manager just so he can compliment how well the staff is doing, because he's not looking to talk to anybody. Todd's the guy that goes in the store, doesn't want to be bothered, wants to get in, get out, get his items, and leave without anybody saying 2 words to him. That's what Todd Bowles looks like to me. Ree also says, looks like we're sliding Logan Hall into Sue's spot. It's strange. He will assumingly get all of Sue's reps, but Todd Bowles keeps calling him a 3-tech. So I don't feel like Logan Hall can just start as a defensive tackle. Part of the allure of a Logan Hall is his versatility. On first and second down, he can be a run-stopping, edge-setting defensive end. And then on third down, when you're looking to get pressure on 3rd and 8, you can slide him down, kick him down inside, reduce him to a 3-tech, and have him rush there. And that's why I think he has the most value to you, as the 34th pick in the draft, is his ability on third downs to reduce inside to a 3-tech and get after the quarterback with his quickness and length going up against a guard. If you're trying to get this man to stand up against the run like Sue did inside on first and second downs, you're sadly mistaken, and that's not a good decision. So I don't see that being his full-time position. I think they're going to move him around, but we'll see what happens. I think he's more so a guy, again, a chess piece, a guy you move around. Personally, that's what I see him as. See, I think I got another super chat, and I do. It is from Metaphor. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you, Metaphor, who writes, build on Potomac. Call the stadium the Pentagon. DOD. Again, names for stadiums, nicknames, like it's just got to be natural. Like the Eagles fans didn't say, hey, we're going to name the stadium the Link. Lincoln Financial took over the stadium. It became the Link. Like that's a natural nickname. You know, that's one thing I've learned with our fan base is we always looking to create nicknames. And I know you were being facetious. I'm not chastising you. I'm just saying our fan base is always looking for a nickname. Like that's the name surrounding the team when they were interested and fans wanted the name of the team to be Red Wolves is because they had already concocted the home stadium will be called the Wolf Den. And the defense will be called the Wolf Pack. And I'm like, all of this stuff is not original, right? You didn't just come up with this stuff. There are other teams collegiately that have these nicknames and monikers. And so none of this stuff that you're coming up with, even though you feel like this is a great idea, none of this stuff is new. But they didn't care. They had all this stuff mapped out. The stadium, the defense is going to be called this. It's going to be awesome. Okay. None of that came to fruition, obviously. But the defense always wanted to give the defense a name when they don't deserve it. Always wanted to give the offense Hogs 2.0. No, they're not the Hogs 2.0. Just let it be what it is. Like, we don't need any more nicknames for anything. Like, let's just see what it is. Let's see who buys the rights to name the stadium, and then we'll see what the stadium, what we can call it. FedEx has been FedEx, and we just left it as that. We never tried to shorten it. Never tried to make it into something else. It's just FedEx. It's our dump, as I like to call it, but it's still our shit. Respect our house. Anyway, I digress. See, I might grab a couple more. I see the comment where he's like, I said he's a piece of work. Somebody said, no, just say it. He's a piece of shit. I don't know him personally. He's a piece of work. I don't know him personally enough to say that he is a piece of the stinky stuff. But I do know that he's a piece of work, clearly, just from listening to people talk about him and their interactions with him. And yeah, he's a piece of work. Let's see. JP writes, Bears did absolutely no favors for Fields. I couldn't agree with you more, JP. When you have a random with the last name Pringle, now I will defend Byron Pringle. Came from Kansas City and actually was good for the Chiefs. But I think a lot of that was based off of Mahomes making Byron Pringle a solid option than Byron Pringle himself being a solid option. I think we'll find that out in Chicago. And maybe Byron Pringle actually is a quality NFL wide receiver and will do good things for Justin Fields. But kind of just feel like Mahomes made Byron Pringle a serviceable option, and he will kind of fade into oblivion, into black in Chicago. But he says, when you have a random with the last name Pringle on your team, your offense is going to suck. Probably going to be picking top 5 in 2023. They didn't do him any favors. I agree, man. I'm so disappointed in their offseason, just specifically with the way they handled building, around Justin Fields. So we'll see. Let's see. I think that is the last hashtag. I don't really see any more. There might be some later on, but I may not get to them. Let's see. All right. Yeah, I don't see any more hashtags. Looks like everybody else conversating amongst each other, which I love in the comment section. Jay Terry, I'll read this one and we'll move on. He says, just seen the notification from Bleacher Report about Terry and Commanders being far apart on his deal. Still shaking my head, pay that man. No worries. That's a part of the process. You know, when you're trying to strike a deal, it's Terry's camp's job to set the number ridiculously high. It's Washington's job to set the number ridiculously low. And when I say ridiculously low for Washington, it's market, what they deem to be market value. This is what this player is getting. Terry's agent doesn't give a shit about what DJ Moore signed for, and him and Terry are kind of in that same, pocket. They don't give a shit about that. Terry's agent is like, look, F DJ Moore. Our guy means more to your organization than DJ Moore means to Carolina. Our guy has had to deal with worse quarterbacking, which isn't that far off because DJ Moore hasn't had great quarterbacking in Carolina either, but he's had to deal with worse quarterbacking here in Washington. He's had to deal with no supporting cast. DJ Moore's got another 1,000-yard receiver alongside him, in Robbie Anderson, who wasn't all that great last year, clearly. But the year before that, it was 2,000-yard receivers. And Curtis Samuel was there the year before. He was a 700-yard receiver and an all-purpose threat. So he's had supporting cast members. Terry has not. So his agent doesn't care anything about fair market value, this, that, and the third, what players are in that same vicinity. He's like, my dude deserves this. And it's Washington's job to say, all right, how about this? And it's his agent's job to counter with this. And eventually they will come to a number that makes sense for all parties involved. And trust me, that number will be reached. It might take a while. It might not happen until literally the eve of training camp, like it did with Jonathan Allen last year. It had to be every bit of maybe a day or two right before training camp. It was late in July, right? It'll be somewhere in that general vicinity. So anyway, I digress. All right. So let's get to our final segment of the show, and that is 3 and out. We haven't done this in a while. Let's get that 3 and out fired up. Yeah. All right. 3 and out. All right. So we're going to talk about 3 different topics on our way out of the show. That's how 3 and out works. So you got first down, you got second down, you got third down, and then you're out of there. Okay. 3 and out. So let's, get to first down. Hard Knocks with the Arizona Cardinals in season. So we got Hard Knocks training camp with the Detroit Lions. I don't know if that moves the needle in terms of excitement. I haven't heard from one person that was like, man, I'm dying to see the Detroit Lions. I'm going to watch it, and I'll talk about it here on the podcast, but I can't imagine anybody other than Lions fans are really excited about that. Then they go in season with the Arizona Cardinals. Last year was the Indianapolis Colts. I told you I watched every episode of that because I wanted to see Carson Wentz in that environment and what he was like, how he was received by his teammates, coaching staff, and ownership. And that's why I know everything that I've heard from them is fraudulent, because if you watch that Hard Knocks, they were literally drooling on and slobbing on Carson Wentz's knob in week 16 or 15, when they went to Arizona with all these guys dealing with COVID and won. And then 2 weeks later, so that might have been week 16. 2 weeks later, he gets COVID himself. Then the NFL kind of revises the, COVID guidelines and protocols to fit where we are in the process with the CDC. And it allows Wentz to not have to miss a game, although he had not practiced all week. He plays poorly against the Raiders. They lose. The following week, he plays poorly against Jacksonville. They lose again. But again, the team didn't play well against Jacksonville. The team did not play well against Vegas. And oh, by the way, Derek Carr had to make one of the throws of his career in order to help them escape Indianapolis with a win. So anyway, I digress. In-season Arizona Cardinals. I'm somewhat intrigued because the Arizona Cardinals, something's off there. I've already talked about that. Kyler Murray, I told you I don't think he's a natural leader of men. I think he's a bit eccentric. That could rub people the wrong way. I'd love to see what he's like. And of course, the Cardinals have the right of first refusal. They don't have to let anything out in terms of footage that they don't want shown to the masses. And so they're not going to allow Kyler Murray to be viewed in a negative light. But I'd love to see him because I can see it on the sidelines, just body language. Again, I studied all of that stuff in college, taking psychology and really, focusing in on that. He's not and I heard Carson Palmer already say that Kyler Murray's not a great leader. I can tell just by looking at the way he conducts himself. He looks like he's pointing the blame at guys when he throws an interception. If a guy runs the wrong route, he shows them up on the field. I can see it. So something's off there, Cliff Kingsbury seems to be super laid back. So I'm like, is he the right man for the job? Because, sometimes laid back is confused for weak. I could be wrong about him. He could be a hard ass, a cool, laid back hard ass. But cool and laid back and hard ass generally don't go in the same sentence. So there's some intrigue with the Arizona Cardinals. How much, though? I don't know. But we'll see. I'm going to watch. I know that much. I will take, even if it's like I did with the Indianapolis Colts and it's in the offseason after it's done and I'm not actually watching in the season as it's taking place, I'm going to watch it. That team probably would have been a lot more fun last year when they had a good record and they had more characters on that team, like Chandler Jones and guys like that. Now that they've vacated, it might not be as colorful and as funny, but I still want to see what that team is all about. So that's first down. The Arizona Cardinals are your in-season Hard Knocks team. Will you watch? Second down. Second down. Jimmy G situation in San Francisco. So apparently Jimmy G is all healthy now and he's ready to go. And the 49ers are like, all right, cool. You got your stuff packed? Good. We'll see if we can get somebody to take you off our hands. And now that the 49ers are desperate, they're like, hey, come on. Somebody come get this dude. Anybody. Look, we'll give him away for a open bag of sour cream and onion Lays. Come on, somebody come and get this man, please. The problem is that the draft has happened, free agency has happened, all of the musical chairs at the quarterback position has been settled. All the teams that needed a chair and a quarterback got a quarterback. That quarterback was placed in chair, so those teams are not scrambling any longer. The desperation factor has gone to, essentially a zero for teams, with free agency, trade, and now the draft. So what I'm telling the 49ers is you pretty much are in a position where you're waiting for a team to have an injury. And if it doesn't happen, a la Sam Bradford, Philadelphia Eagles, when they drafted Wentz back in 2016, Wentz was the third quarterback on the roster behind Sam Bradford and Chase Daniel. And then Teddy Bridgewater snaps his leg in half. The Vikings are like, oh my God, we're going to suck. We need a quarterback. And the Eagles are like, hey, we got Sam Bradford over here. Give us a first round pick and he's yours. And the Vikings were so desperate, they gave up a first round pick for Sam Bradford. And the Eagles were like, cool, we'll start Carson Wentz. And Chase Daniel's like, hey, wait, I was in pole position. I was in second. You're just the backup. Relax. So that's what the 49ers are essentially waiting on now is they're going to need a team that thinks they've got a chance to have a really good season, to have an injury at the quarterback position, and that would facilitate a need to go get a quarterback. Other than that happening in training camp or in the preseason, I just don't see how they get from under Jimmy G. And I think it's a situation where they just may have to come to the realization that he's going to be on the roster. You're just going to have to eat his salary for this year. They're trying to move him before the start of the season because they don't want to guarantee his contract for the upcoming season. Once you get to week 1, he's on that roster. He's locked in. They got to pay him no matter what, whether they trade him at the trade deadline or what may have you. They may work out a deal with someone at the trade deadline where they they take on the rest of that contract or whatever the case may be. But they're trying to get from under that. They don't want to give him that money. Guess what? Nobody else in the league wants to give him that money either at this point. And they're not. And if you're not desperate, why would you? So, you know what? It's not the worst thing in the world though if they just hold on to him. Who knows what Trey Lance is going to be, right? I'm rooting like hell for that kid to be good because I got so many of his rookie cards. I need Trey Lance to be good, but I think he's going to be just fine. Like I have so much belief in Kyle Shanahan, but in the event that something happens or he gets hurt or whatever the case may be, it'd be nice to have Jimmy G there as a backup, right? But they want to trade him bad, and Jimmy wants to play and he wants to start somewhere. That ship has sailed, man. The only way Jimmy G gets traded is if something like, and it's got to be a team like Indy, right, where there's no other option available in-house. And the guy that you're trading for could replace the guy that you just traded for because Matt Ryan is 87 years old and long term, he's not necessarily the answer for Indianapolis. He's just a stopgap right now. So it's got to be a place like that where they didn't draft a young guy. Like if Ryan Tannehill got hurt in Tennessee, they're not trading for Jimmy Garoppolo. They may scour the NFL streets looking for a veteran, but they may just decide, all right, we're going to start the young fella. Or that might be a team that might be interested. Like, hey, Malik's not ready. I don't know who their backup quarterback is. Might be Logan Woodside or somebody like that. Whatever the case may be. Maybe Tennessee is the type of team, but Indy is definitely the type of team where if Matt Ryan went down, they would be interested in trading for Jimmy Garoppolo. Kind of like where the Browns are with Baker Mayfield. Like he's of more value to you than to just, cut him or just give him away in a trade. He's of more value to you because if Deshaun Watson can't play, if Deshaun Watson gets injured, your season's over. But if you got Baker Mayfield, it's not over. Now, it's an awkward dynamic and situation. And, Deshaun Watson is a whole nother discussion for a whole nother day. We're going to talk about his situation. He's going to get suspended. I'm all but convinced at this point after hearing how the league meetings went and what he said to them. He's getting suspended. But we'll talk about that at a later date and time. Anyway, Jimmy G, I don't think is going to get traded unless there's a major injury to a team that feels like they can win and they've got the roster to do so. And the quarterback that they had get injured was a veteran guy that was, kind of on the outs anyway, like Tennessee, like Indy, like Minnesota, even though I don't think Jimmy G would be a guy that they would go after in the event of Kirk going down to injury. But it's got to be a situation like that where a guy is on the verge of being on the outs anyway. So it's not going to be a team with a young quarterback that they think has a chance to be good. Because I think at that point, you just do what the Eagles did and say, all right, you're up. But Wentz was the number 2 overall pick. Malik Willis was a 3rd round pick. Matt Corral, if something were to happen to, say, Sam Darnold in Carolina, I mean, Carolina, are you even close? Would you even think about doing it like that? I don't think so, right? But those are the kinds of teams, right? Maybe a New Orleans is another team that if something happened to Jameis again, he had an issue with his rehab, setback, whatever. Maybe that's a team that thinks they're close to winning something. Anyway, I digress. All right, let's get to 3rd down. All right. This is interesting. I don't know if you guys heard this, right? The Patriots offense is under fire right now. So have you heard the rumors that the people inside that building, players in particular, are concerned about the Patriots offense without Josh McDaniels. Have you heard this? So reportedly, they have not picked an offensive coordinator yet. Okay. They knew that Josh McDaniels was taking the job in Vegas like 3 months ago. They still don't have an offensive coordinator yet. Now, in Belichick's defense, he's kind of ambiguous with this stuff. Like Brian Flores was the linebackers coach. He was also the defensive coordinator. Okay. That's kind of the thing that he does. Like you get a title, but you don't get the title. You get a responsibility, but you don't necessarily get all of that responsibility, but you get a bunch of responsibility. So maybe all of the responsibility don't get the title. You know, we've all seen people at jobs where they're working at a supervisory level, but being paid at a normal worker level. You know what I mean? It's just, he hasn't had to do this. You know, once upon a time, it was Charlie Weiss. They went from Charlie Weiss to Josh McDaniels, and Josh McDaniels left for what, 1 year, 2 years to go to Denver. It was a train wreck. He came right back, and it was like he never left. But all in all, you had Tom Brady. So it was never going to be a shit show. You had Tom Brady. There's no Tom Brady now. Okay. And there's no Josh McDaniels, and there's no Charlie Weiss. And now Belichick's got to figure this shit out. And the one thing Belichick has always done a really good job of is grooming defensive guys, right? His son, Gerard Mayo, Brian Flores. You know, he's done Matt Patricia, even though, Patricia flamed out in Detroit. And Flores did a wonderful job in Miami, but he's still looking for work as a head coach. I think he's now on the Steelers staff with Mike Tomlin. But he's always done a great job of developing defensive head coaching talent. Never offensive. That's not his thing, and he hasn't had to. Like I said, Charlie Weiss was there originally. He goes to Notre Dame, and in him leaving, they discovered Josh McDaniels, and he was fantastic. And then he was going to take the job. He took the job in Denver, butchered that thing 6 ways to Sunday, and came running back like all Patriots assistants do, and was going to take the Indy job, turn that down, stayed in New England, and now he finally decides on Vegas. The reports are, get this. This is the funniest part of this whole thing. Check this out, right? Check this out. They don't know who's going to call plays, but one of the names in the running to be the play caller for the New England Patriots is none other than one Joseph R. Judge. Mr. 3 quarterback sneaks in a row himself, Joe Judge, is one of the guys that they're considering to be a play caller in New England. Have they lost their ever-loving minds in New England? Boy, I can tell you, if I were in New England in that offense, I would be concerned as well. We don't have a play caller. We don't have a direction right now. We have no idea, no identity whatsoever offensively and what it's going to look like, what it's going to be. We don't have a guy you should be implementing your new offensive scheme if you're going to have a new one. If they're just going to continue to do what Josh McDaniels was doing, then they need somebody to step in that was on his staff, that is comfortable with what they did under Josh McDaniels, to step up and be that guy. Clearly, that is not Joe Judge. He's a special teams dude. I mean, Matt Patricia is another name that I heard potentially. He's a defensive guy. Like, what in the hell is going on in New England? They talked to Ty Montgomery, Swiss Army knife, running back, wide receiver, kick returner, does a little bit of everything. Jack of all trades, as I like to say, Pam Mom, master of many, proficient at none, right? He said, look, they brought me here to do a job. I'm going to do whatever that job is they asked me. He kept it as vague as possible. I am a New England Patriot. They brought me here. I'm going to do whatever job they asked me to do. When he was asked about the offensive philosophy and what he thinks about it. Translation, hey, this is some bullshit, man. If I knew about this before I signed, I wouldn't have signed here. Now, I want to check, and there's no guarantee I'm going to get a check anywhere else. So I'm Ty Montgomery. I'm not, I'm not a highly sought after commodity. So yeah, I'm probably going to just sign anyway, but this is some bullshit. If Joe Judge is in the running to be your offensive play caller, you're in some trouble. And a lot of people out there were sold that Mac Jones, and they may figure this thing out. All right. Bill Belichick may be playing all of us. He's got this thing under control and there's nothing to worry about. But I don't know, man. This if Joseph Judge is your play caller, report C. The rest of the AFC is going to stick it to your ass faster than a skit. Ouch. I'll be keeping a nice watchful eye on what's going on in New England. I'll keep my ears to the streets to see if any developments arise there. But boy, if you're a Patriots fan, scary hours right now, man. Some scary times, man. Some really, really spooky shit going on. Really, really spooky. That is for certain. Anyway, I digress. That's 3 and out. Let's get out of here. I got a couple super chats. Let's take these last two on the way out. Joe Rockhead. Jay, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. My guy, Joe Rockhead Jay writes, I am late, but I am here. Late is better than never. All right. Even if you late, still great. Says, what's up, Lou? Keep rocking. You know what it is, Joe Rockhead, man. I truly do appreciate you. All right. Metaphor. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Is it a crime? Is it a crime that we still don't want Dan and we don't want Dan to want us too? Sing it, Metaphor. Sing it. As sweet as Sade would. Sing it. Now it's not a crime. Get his ass the hell out of here on the first midnight train to Georgia. Hey, anyway. That's going to do it. Is it a crime? I ain't going to do that to y'all tonight. I'm going to let y'all out of here, man. I appreciate y'all chopping it up with the kid. Truly do appreciate y'all for coming through, kicking it with me for the last damn near 3 hours. A lot of fun, as I knew it would be. Joe Judge, offensive play caller in New England. Poor Mac Jones. The miggity Mac. Bow, the miggity Mac. Woo, he could be in some trouble. Could Mac Jones. If they don't figure that situation out. Anyway, I digress. You know what it is. Get off the bench, get in the game, and kick it with me, your man, Louie T. Until next time. Thank you guys for joining me. I look forward to chopping it up with you guys. And so this week's going to be a little weird because it is Memorial Day weekend. So I will be out of the office on Friday. So what I'm going to try to do is get 3 pods in this week. So I'm trying to decide if I want to go Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, or if I want to go Monday, Wednesday, Thursday. I'll figure it out either way. The goal is to get 3 of these things out this week. Maybe I'll get around to the Madden in the Trap House story this week. I don't know. It's coming though. It's coming this offseason. I promise you that. I'll give you how I became a Memphis Grizzlies fan. If I haven't already told you guys that, all of those stories and then some. We're going to get to all of those this offseason. We're getting into that little area where there's not a lot to talk about. So I can definitely provide filler. That is for certain. Anyway, you guys enjoy the rest of your evening, and we will reconvene at some point this week, whether it's tomorrow or it's Wednesday. Either way, you guys have a good one. God bless, and good night.
LouieTeeNetwork.